Chapter 2677. He had seen countless people in his life. Looking at Empress Star Rain, one could tell from her eyes that she was a rather simple person. It should be very easy to deceive. If he could deceive her, not only would he be able to enjoy the dream-broken boundaries #1 beauty, he would also be able to obtain such a huge amount of resources from her. The endless crystallization of time, the enormous number of Tao Lords, and the entire Southbright City. At that time, it would all be his. But Big Brothering, that Mr. Su's means are extraordinary. We have to be on guard. His confidant reminded, to be able to help Empress Star Rain reach her current level in a short period of time. From this, one could see how powerful this person was. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he could change the weather with a flip of his hand. He had to be careful of Empress Star Rain. Quan didn't think much of it. He snorted coldly and said, "What abilities does that person have? If I have enough time, I can also recruit so many Tao Lords." He mistakenly believed that Empress Star Rain's time crystallization came from her many years of accumulation. Little did he know that every time crystal that he enjoyed as an offering came from Suyu. I'll look for an opportunity to spar with that so-called Mr. Su. I'll let Empress Star Rain see who's trustworthy. Quan said. The confidant chuckled. Of course it's Big Brothering who will crush the other party. Quan was Empress Waning Moon's advisor, so he was very confident in himself. When Queen Star Rain left the space, she recalled Quan's gaze and felt disgusted. Damn it! Queen Star Rain angrily punched the garden beside her. In the end, through the relief sculpture, he saw Qin Siener and her family, who were having a great time inside. She smiled and was about to go in. A figure appeared in the garden. It wasn't anyone else. It was Suyu, Big Brother. She was overjoyed and was about to run in, but she slowly stopped. Suyu and Qin Siener gave each other a deep hug. Then he patted Su Kaier's head. The three of them had a warm reunion. Empress Star Rain did not feel good in her heart. She felt a sour feeling of being abandoned. They were a family, and he was just an outsider. Moreover, when Suyu came back, the first person he wanted to see wasn't her, but his family. Thinking that, the Star Rain Empress ran off alone and sat in front of the ancient well, frowning. Sigh. People just don't know how to be content, Queen Star Rain muttered to herself. Once you get one, you want more. In the past, she only wanted Southern Ming City to be strong. Now that the Nanming City was powerful, she wanted to monopolize Suyu. The ravine at the bottom of one's heart could never be filled. What do you want? I can give it to you. A gentle voice rang out behind him. Looking back, Empress Star Rain couldn't help but feel happy, but then she purposely put on a straight face and said, I don't want anything. Is that so? Don't you want my gift? So you took out a drop of the time essence. Although that strand of hair had been temporarily sealed by the mysterious old man, it was still not enough. But every few years, the time essence would still drip down. I don't want to, Queen Star Rain said. Suddenly, her eyes were drawn to the time essence. Time essence. Suyu chuckled. You still don't want it? If you don't, I'll give it to someone else. No. Empress Star Rain snatched it over and said with a slightly red face, It's a waste for someone else. Her heart was filled with joy, and the gloominess she had felt just now disappeared. Suyu still remembered her, and he had prepared such a precious gift for her. Absorb it now, and I'll help you refine it, Suyu said. Empress Star Rain nodded happily. Several hours later, Empress Star Rain opened her eyes, which were filled with irrepressible surprise. My time bloodline has been completely activated. Under the effect of the time essence, her broken bloodline power had been restored to normal. From now on, she was a real descendant of the Time Master. Thank you, brother. Empress Star Rain wanted to jump into Suyu's arms subconsciously, but when she thought of his family, she held back. Suyu nodded. Fortunately, I made it before the competition for the Time Master. In another 5 years, the competition for the Time Master would officially begin. That would be the most turbulent and chaotic time in the dream-interrupted realm. She had managed to restore her bloodline in time, so she was considered qualified to compete. I'll need to train in isolation for the next few years. Is there anything I need to deal with personally? Suyu asked. He had finally obtained Xiaohao's time acceleration treasure, so he naturally had to master the restoration method of the Nightmare Crossing Lotus Throne. Secondly, he had to study how to get more Emperor's blood in order to activate the sacred mortal body. Emperor Star Rain thought about it and said, "Yes, I want to select some qualified and reliable people as soon as possible. When you're not around, I can count on them." Suyu suddenly understood. "I almost forgot. I have to deal with a group of people who have been recruited." Suyu nodded. The people recruited with a large amount of money were mixed. Some were good, and some were bad. He couldn't use them all recklessly, so he had to screen them. "You make the arrangements. Set a time, and I'll inspect them," Suyu said. Emperor Star Rain nodded her head in reliance. With her big brother in charge, she could rest assured about everything. Suyu went to a quiet place while he still had time. He took out the 9-colored power left by the Emperor's ruler. The power contained in it was extraordinarily powerful. Wouldn't it be great if he could refine it into his own cultivation? However, if he used it rashly, it would be too dangerous. He didn't want his cultivation to be damaged by this thing again. With a thought, Suyu summoned the dead woman. "Take a drop, and I'll observe whether there's a safe way to absorb it." He couldn't, but he could use the dead woman as an experiment. Controlling the dead woman, the separated soul stared at Suyu and said, "You're really generous." Suyu frowned. "Why are you talking so much? Take it." He handed a drop of the 9-colored liquid to the dead woman, who took it hesitantly. "Also, take off all your clothes," Suyu said. He had to observe the changes in her body to see whether the 9-color power could affect her body again. The dead woman was stunned, and her eyes became a little strange. After a moment of hesitation, she undressed herself reluctantly. Suyu looked at her with a strange expression. "What's wrong with you? You're just occupying the dead woman, not the real you. Why are you so hesitant?" The consciousness of the separated soul was male, just like him. Why was it so awkward to take off her clothes? Suyu felt strange, as if he was ordering a conscious woman to take off her clothes. "Okay." The dead woman pursed her lips, took off her clothes one by one, and finally, she was naked. A beautiful body that was covered in runes entered his eyes. "All right, take it," Suyu said, staring at her body without looking up. The dead woman raised her hand and put the drop of liquid into her mouth. Chapter 2678. As Suyu stared at the female corpse, he finally noticed that something was amiss. His eyes turned, and his palms quietly formed a seal behind him. He quietly withdrew his soul that had fused with the female corpse's body. With his current attainments in the soul, he was able to do it silently and undetectably. "Why didn't you swallow it?" So he took a step back and asked casually. The woman put down the droplet and said, "Original, what are you going to do?" Suyu's heart shrank. He had already retracted his subsoul, so it was impossible for it to be his subsoul that was answering him now. It was the dead woman herself. His heart shuddered. The dead woman had woken up a long time ago. She had firmly suppressed Suyu's divided soul, but she had been hiding it from Suyu all along. It made Suyu think that he was still in control of her. Thinking of this, he felt a chill run down his spine. How long has it been? What was her goal? How many secrets did she know about him? What's wrong with you? The dead woman seemed to have noticed that Suyu had unintentionally taken a step back, so she walked over and asked. Suyu took another step back and shouted, "Stop right there." The female corpse stopped in her tracks. She was a little surprised, but she seemed to have realized something. She immediately checked her body. In the end, he discovered that the split soul that was residing in Suyu's body was nowhere to be seen. He was exposed. The expression in the dead woman's eyes began to change. His eyes, which were originally exceptionally clear, became grave and stern at this moment. "I originally wanted to endure for a while longer." A surge of power at the level of a tunnel master surged forth. "Tell me, where did you learn the heavenly book characters?" It turned out that the dead woman's target was the heavenly book characters that Suyu had mastered. However, Suyu's mastery of the heavenly book words was limited. Thus, she chose to endure and observe silently. He hoped to find the source of Suyu's knowledge of the heavenly book. Unfortunately, he had no clue. It was only now that Suyu discovered it by accident. Suyu secretly pinched a ruler's treasure and said coldly, "Why should I sue you? Humph. Just because you took off my clothes the first time we met?" The female corpse's face was slightly red as she said angrily, The corners of Suyu's mouth twitched. When Suyu first discovered this woman in the Crystal of Nine Serenities, he was surprised to find that there were heavenly book characters on her face. Therefore, he took off his clothes to see if there were any on his body. However, at that time, he only treated her as a corpse. "Who asked you to pretend to be dead?" Suyu retorted, now that he thought about it. She had already woken up at that time, but she had hidden her soul so deeply that Suyu hadn't noticed it. It was no wonder that Suyu couldn't resurrect him even when he used the life domain. It turned out that she didn't die at all. How could she be revived? What logic? You have to strip me naked just because I'm dead? The female corpse reprimanded. "Hey, is it reasonable for you to pretend to be dead?" Suyu pinched the ruler's treasure and said, "If you leave now, you still have a chance and don't come back." "What else?" The dead woman laughed angrily. "You want to strip me again?" Suyu looked at her naked body. It seemed like there was nothing left for him to take off. "Ahem. Can't we talk properly? I've saved you from the netherworld crystal and saved your younger brother. Isn't it good to part on good terms now? Why must we fight and kill?" The dead woman was startled. "My brother? Who?" At this moment, a sigh came from the void. "It's me, Protector Fengling." There was a spatial fluctuation. A silhouette appeared. It was Chu, who had just arrived. "Protector Chu?" Protector Fengling sized Chu up and said in surprise, "You've recovered? Congratulations." Chu coughed awkwardly. "Protector Fengling, can I ask you put your clothes back on first?" Protector Fengling blushed and put her clothes back on immediately. She said, "You came just in time. Let's capture this shameless star together." Her face was filled with hatred. "Protector Fengling, forget it. Both of us are indebted to him." Chu looked at Suyu with a complicated expression. Him? Fengling hadn't died, but her consciousness didn't recover immediately. When she was cut out from the netherworld crystal, she only had very vague memories. She remembered being stripped by Suyu. Chu told her everything in detail. After listening, Fengling covered her mouth. "I can't believe your cultivation has regressed and returned to the state of a baby." Chu sighed. "If it had been a few decades later, I would have regressed from the state of a baby to the state of nothingness. Mr. Su has done me a great favor. Protector Fengling, please have mercy." Fengling clenched her teeth and glared at Suyu. "It's easy to let him go. Anyway, he has been controlling me for a long time while I was unconscious. Who knows what he has done to me? I'm used to it, but we must make him tell us the source of the words of the heavenly book." Suyu couldn't defend himself. He really hadn't done anything to the dead woman. He had only taken off her clothes twice. Chu thought about it and said, "Forget it, Fengling. We'll find a way to undo the words of the heavenly book on you." "Humph. Forget it if you don't want to help. I can do it alone." Fengling snorted. "I've seen his tricks anyway." In particular, she knew Suyu's areas and the 3-minute needles like the back of her hand. "Huff." Fengling attacked immediately, a layer of faintly discernible pitch-black flames bursting from her body. Suyu kept the Dominator treasure in his hand. Since she was someone he had just met, it wouldn't be nice to kill her on the spot. "You've seen them all, right? What about this?" Suyu opened his palm. The cauldron formed by the condensation of the 8 great areas came crashing down. Fengling was startled. "How many more tricks do you have?" In the blink of an eye, the black flames on the surface of Fengling's body shot up into the sky, turning into a giant palm that pushed upwards. All of a sudden, the cauldron of the 8 great areas was stopped. But before she could react, Suyu swiped his palm, and a replica ruler appeared. With a slash in the air, a long beam of 9-colored light struck down from above. Fengling couldn't take it anymore. She was suppressed by the cauldron, as she struggled with great difficulty on the ground. Open. Fengling was in existence at the peak of the early stage of the Pathmaster. After all, she had the vague intention of lifting the cauldron. Suyu took the opportunity to tap the air, and a needle imbued with the time realm shot over. With a poof, half of the needle sank into the space between her eyebrows. Feng Ling groaned in agony at the piercing pain in her soul, and she had no more strength to struggle. You obviously can't do it alone, Su Yu said indifferently as he walked over. He glanced at Chu. You want to join in too? Chu stared at Su Yu in surprise. It had only been a few years, but when they met again, Su Yu already possessed the terrifying ability to fight the Path Master alone. Mr. Su, please let her go, considering that she has no obvious ill intentions, Chu said with mixed feelings. Su Yu said expressionlessly, she'd better stay forever, lest I have to be wary of her all the time. If he let her go, it was hard to guarantee that this woman wouldn't launch a surprise attack. Chu was in a dilemma. They had come this time to take Guardian Feng Ling away. Haha. Su Yu, why don't you do me a favor and let her go? I'll give you some additional compensation. There was another spatial fluctuation. Chapter 2679. Seeing him, Su Yu was not surprised at all. So, you are also one of the guardians of the ancient god Jiuyo. The 4 guardians of the ancient god Jiuyo had all shown up. The holy demon, Chu, Feng Ling, and the multi-eyed old man. Huh. The multi-eyed old man laughed hoarsely and took out an ancient scroll. The ancient god Jiuyo had a conversation with the ancient god Jiuyo about some special uses of the divine 9-dragon cauldron. I think it might be useful to you. The multi-eyed old man tossed it to Su Yu. Hearing that, Su Yu's pupils constricted. Special uses of the divine 9-dragon cauldron? He caught it with the sleeve of his robe and did not use his hand to hold it. Why would the ancient god Jiuyo pass on such an important method of using it? Su Yu shook his head in disbelief. The divine 9-dragon cauldron was the most important thing to the ancient god Jiuyo. How could he give it to an outsider? It's true, Chu said. Perhaps the ancient god Jiuyo had a premonition and distributed what he had learned to the other ancient gods in advance. Just in case something happened to him one day and he couldn't pass on everything he had learned, the ancient god Jiuyo received part of the method of controlling the divine 9-dragon cauldron. What? Su Yu was secretly shocked. Was there such a thing? His heart thumped, and he could not help but withdraw the 8 cauldrons and release Feng Ling. All right, you can go now. Su Yu waved his hand. He could not wait to read the incomplete scroll. Bastard. Feng Ling was furious and embarrassed. She wanted to rush over, but was stopped by Chu and the multi-eyed old man. You are no match for the descendant of the ancient god Jiuyo, especially since he has surpassed you. The multi-eyed old man laughed hoarsely. Only then did Feng Ling give up in anger. Brat, don't let me see you again, Feng Ling threatened. Unwilling to give up, she used the space talisman and prepared to leave this place to find a place to reunite and discuss the resurrection of the ancient god Jiuyo. All of a sudden, the door was suddenly kicked open by someone. There was a powerful seal on the door, and ordinary people could not kick it open. Mother, look! Father's groping other women inside. The person who opened the door immediately shouted before he could see what was going on inside. Qin Xianer walked over and looked inside. She saw that there were 3 other strangers besides Su Yu. Kerr, father is talking to an important guest. What are you doing? Qin Xianer pinched Su Kai's ear. At this time, Su Kai discovered that the situation in the room had changed greatly. She hurriedly explained, feeling wronged. It's true. I just saw father and this naked woman shamelessly entangled together. Su Kai pointed at Feng Ling. The latter's face turned red from being pointed at, and he said, Hey, let's be clear. We're not tangling, we're fighting. Really? Don't you know what nonsense you're spouting? In any case, she just stripped naked. Humph, shameless woman, seducing my father. Su Kai rolled her eyes. Feng Ling's eyes widened. It's clearly your father. Before she could finish her sentence, Su Yu rushed over and covered her mouth. Xianer, why are you here? Quickly take Kai back. Su Yu was quite embarrassed. How could he let this woman say it out loud? That would be even more difficult to explain. All right, husband, please continue with your work. Qin Xianer looked at Feng Ling calmly. He did not feel threatened at all. She understood that Su Yu would not be tempted by such a woman. The only thing that could tempt him was, apart from her, there was only that woman, right? Thinking of this, Qin Xianer's heart was filled with mixed feelings. Xia Jingyu. It had been 100 years, and she had almost forgotten her face. However, she could not forget her name, the name of the woman who still lived in Su Yu's heart. She grabbed Su Kai, and turned to leave. Suddenly, the old man said, "My lady, please wait." Qin Xianer turned around and asked, "Do you have any advice?" The old man blinked his eyes, then suddenly knelt down on one knee and said respectfully, "Guardian Duo Mu pays his respects to Master." Chu's whole body trembled, and he looked at Qin Xianer in surprise. He hesitated and said, "Duo Mu? Could she be?" Duo Mu responded to him with a solemn look. Chu took a deep breath and knelt down immediately. Guardian Chu pays his respects to Master. Feng Ling was stunned, then knelt down as well. Guardian Feng Ling pays her respects to Master. Apart from Su Yu, Qin Xianer and Su Kai were all stunned. "What are you doing?" Qin Xianer asked, puzzled. Suddenly, she felt a warmth in her chest, and the little black phoenix flew out, hovering above Qin Xianer's head. The ancient god of Jiuyo's divine artifact, the divine fire of Jiuyo. Feng Ling cried out in shock. This was a divine artifact that only the descendants of the ancient god of Jiuyo could wield. It had actually appeared in the body of the young girl in front of them. Without a doubt, she was the descendant of the ancient god of Jiuyo, the master they needed to assist in becoming the new ancient god of Jiuyo. "What are you doing?" "I am not your master," Qin Xianer said hurriedly. Feng Ling's eyes were filled with respect as she said, "Master, I have eyes but failed to recognize you." She had seen Qin Xianer several times while disguised as the female corpse. However, she had not recognized her identity. Qin Xianer looked at Su Yu in bewilderment, asking for help. Su Yu sighed. "I wanted to hide it from you for a while longer." To be honest, he did not want Qin Xianer to recognize the three of them, because if she did, Qin Xianer would be like him, a person that all the rulers wanted to destroy. Unexpectedly, fate had brought them together. Apart from the ambitious holy demon, the other three protectors were gathered around him. And finally, they recognized Qin Xianer, the descendant of the ancient god of Jiuyo. Everything seemed to be guided by an invisible force and could not be changed. "Husband." Qin Xianer held Su Yu's arm and asked in confusion, "Do you know anything?" Su Yu told her about how the ancient god of Jiuyo sealed the Jiuyo world before his death, and how he distributed his power to the four guardians, passing it on to the next descendant, and how a new ancient god of Jiuyo finally appeared. Qin Xianer was stunned for a while. She had not explicitly fought for the power of the ancient god of Jiuyo, but they had taken the initiative to come to her. In comparison, Su Yu really felt that he was not a descendant at all. Apart from the divine nine-dragon Cauldron, he had to rely on himself for everything else. Even the lifetime knowledge that the ancient god of Jiuyo had given to the other 7 ancient gods required Su Yu to find them one by one. Unlike Qin Xianer, the guardians had come to him directly. They were all descendants of the ancient gods, but the gap between them was too great. "Master, please let us follow you," the three said in unison. If they could defeat the saint demon, the 4 guardians would unite and give all the gifts to Qin Xianer. Then, a new ancient god of Jiuyo would be born. "This all right." Qin Xianer thought about it, looked at Su Yu and Su Kai, and nodded in agreement. She had been hiding in the sacred city for many years, and she longed to be able to protect her daughter. She longed to no longer be a burden to Su Yu. Chapter 2680. "Mother, how could you take in this vixen?" Su Kai, popped her head out and stared at Protector Feng Ling angrily. The latter blushed, feeling both angry and amused. Now that Su Kai was the young master, she could not be bothered. "Don't talk nonsense," Qin Xianer scolded. Suker stuck out her tongue and muttered, "She is a vixen, a stinky vixen, a vixen who stole my father." Protector Feng Ling could only smile bitterly. She really wanted to strangle her. Su Yu's veins were throbbing on his forehead. "Kai, stop talking nonsense. I only have a normal relationship with Protector Feng Ling. You're just a kid." Su Kai snorted and said unhappily, "You should reflect on yourself, father. You're always provoking this and that." "Huh? Who did I provoke?" Su Yu was amused. His daughter was really unruly. How could she talk to her father like that? Don't think I didn't see that stinky girl, the Empress. She's sticking to you like a shadow, and you're still trying to please her. She probably saw Suyu give a drop of the time essence to the Star Rain Empress. She thought Suyu was provoking her. Really, seducing married men just because you look like a young girl. Shameless. Sukai said angrily. The Star Rain Empress was no younger than Suyu. But because of her physique and cultivation, her appearance had always been that of a young girl of 14 or 15 years old. Moreover, she was so beautiful that Su Kai'er was a little jealous. Kai'er, go back and kneel. Qin Xian'er's pretty face turned cold. She was getting more and more unruly. I'll kneel. Su Kai'er ran back angrily with a long face. Chu and Duo Mu looked at each other and smiled. Suyu's daughter was really rebellious. Qin Xian'er sighed. I didn't teach my daughter well. I'm sorry. Suyu looked in the direction of Su Kai'er, his heart filled with indescribable regret. Su Kai'er had grown up in a destitute environment, so she was rebellious. Su Kai'er was also responsible for this. Looking at Chu, Duo Mu, and Feng Ling, Suyu muttered, "What are your plans for the future? Can you tell me?" He still needed to consider whether or not to leave 3 ancient god, 9 nether protectors at his side. Duo Mu looked at Qin Xian'er, and after getting the latter's approval, he slowly said, "We plan to find the Saint Demon and obtain the legacy of the ancient god of the 9 underworlds from him. When the time comes, the 4 remnants will be gathered, and a new ancient god of the 9 nether will be created." When Suyu heard this, he raised his eyebrows slightly. "What do you mean by recreating an ancient god of the netherworld?" Suyu asked. Multi-Eyed laughed hoarsely. "Naturally, it is to let Master obtain the power of the ancient god of the 9 nether and become the new ancient god of the 9 nether." Really? Suyu kept his guard up. When it came to ancient gods, he had to be careful. If the ancient god used Qin Xian'er's body to revive and occupy her body, the gains would not make up for the losses. "When do you plan to attack the holy demon?" Suyu asked. Duo Mu pondered and said, "The Saint Fiend is hiding now. We can only wait for him to appear." Hearing this, Suyu said meaningfully, "That day won't be too far away." The holy demon was ambitious and coveted the entire time domain. Sooner or later, he would appear when the world was in chaos. At that time, the struggle for the position of ruler would be at its most intense. For the time being, you will stay in Empress Star Rain's mansion and try not to show yourselves, Suyu said. The 3 of them nodded. After settling them down, Suyu immediately took out the remnant chapter that Duo Mu had given him. It recorded the conversation between Ancient God 9 Nether and Ancient God 9 Dragon. In particular, the conversation between Ancient God 9 Dragon was recorded in the most detail. Suyu's eyes were glued to it, and he looked through it in detail without missing a single word. A few days later, in a cavern world, Suyu took out the divine 9-dragon cauldron and uttered obscure words. His hands kept forming seals. A moment later, he slammed his palm on the divine 9-dragon cauldron. Roar! In an instant, the 8 crystallized dragons looked as if they had been freed from their shackles. They flew down from the divine 9-dragon cauldron and grew to be tens of thousands of feet tall. Each of the giant dragons emitted the same cultivation as Suyu. Moreover, they each controlled a domain. 8 dragons' flight. In an instant, 8 10,000 zhang long giant dragons carrying the divine 9-dragon cauldron soared to the sky. The divine 9-dragon cauldron spun faster and faster as the 8 dragons pushed against it. In the end, it turned into an afterimage. Puff! Puff! The spinning divine 9-dragon cauldron flew out and smashed everything in its way. It was a complete shattering, destroying both his body and soul. It caused it to not exist in the world at all. Suyu waved his palm, causing the divine 9-dragon cauldron to slowly stop revolving. Its whole body seemed to be burning red, and it was emitting green smoke. If the ancient god Jiulong were to use it, a casual strike would be enough to destroy the entire dream-interrupted world. Suyu was not very satisfied with his own performance. The power of the divine 9-dragon cauldron depended on the mastery of the 8 domains. Suyu had only mastered the middle-level domain, and he was far from being able to unleash the power of this strike. Of course, this was only relative to ancient God Nine Dragon. So far, the power it had unleashed was still quite impressive. With a single strike, an early-stage Tao Lord should have been reduced to ashes, unable to resist at all. In addition, the Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron had many other uses that were unknown to him. The most amazing thing about it was its refinement ability. With the cauldron as the furnace and the 8 domains as the tinder, it could smelt everything in the world. Ancient God Nine Dragon had personally said this in the conversation in the Remnant Piece. He had once used the Divine Nine Dragon's cauldron to refine a fiend whose cultivation was close to that of a sovereign. The evil spirit was dead. However, its great path was refined into 9 elixirs by the Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. One of the elixirs was given to Ancient God Nine Nether. According to Ancient God Nine Dragon, one elixir could create a heavenly law master. Suyu was overwhelmed with emotion as he stroked the Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. He had never imagined that the Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron would possess such terrifying power. Suddenly, he had a thought. He took out the remaining power of the bottle of the 9-colored ruler. Since the Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron could smelt everything, could he dispel the destructive power of this power and leave only its pure power? With a thought, he immediately poured the whole bottle of liquid into the Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Then, according to the smelting method that Ancient God Nine Dragon had described, he began to activate it. Suddenly, the 8 domains turned into flames and roasted under the Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Waves of 9-colored mist emerged from within the Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. This continued for a full 3 days. Only when there was no longer any trace of the 9-colored mist did Suyu stop, somewhat exhausted. With Ancient God Nine Dragon's power, smelting this little thing would probably take the blink of an eye. Suyu spent an entire 3 days and 3 nights. He opened the Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron and looked inside. A crystal glass ball the size of a thumb appeared. He immediately took it out and was delighted to discover that it was filled with exceptionally pure power, without any impurities. The remaining power of the 9-colored ruler had also been completely wiped out. Chapter 2681. He immediately swallowed it. All of a sudden, the Tao marks in Suyu's body were filled at an alarming rate. In just half a day, he had reached his limit. With a pop, his cultivation broke through to the middle stage of nirvana. However, it had not stopped yet. The power of the crystal ball was incredible, and it was still filling up with Tao marks. 2 days later, Suyu raised his head and roared. A surge of mysterious path power surged out like a mountain torrent. Late stage of middle nirvana. Suyu was amazed. The power of the heavenly ruler was almost completely preserved under the refinement of the Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. That was why it had such great power. It had advanced his cultivation by 2 whole levels. In the future, with the Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron, he would not have to worry about cultivation difficulties. He solemnly put away the remnant of the book and left the secret room. Next, it was time to use Xiaohao's time acceleration treasure to study the cultivation method of the nightmare crossing Lotus Throne. However, before long-term isolation, there was one thing that needed to be taken care of. With a thought, he came to the side of Empress Starrain. She was holding a list of names in her hands, frowning as she thought about it. "Are these the new guards that you have in mind?" Suyu asked. Empress Starrain was used to Suyu's mysterious appearance. Without turning her head, she said, "No, I just listed the stronger ones, but I hope you can help me choose them." After experiencing the repeated betrayals of the guards, Empress Starrain did not have the slightest confidence in her judgment of people. "Let's go to the cavern world. I will personally inspect them." Suyu's eyes were cold. Suddenly recruiting so many tunnel masters, there would inevitably be people with ulterior motives. It had to be taken care of. Otherwise, there would be endless trouble. When the 2 of them appeared in the cavern world, the many tunnel masters who had sensed it all appeared. Empress Starrain introduced with a smile. "This person beside me is Mr. Su, my most important advisor." On the surface, Suyu appeared as her advisor. Hearing this, many tunnel masters looked at him in surprise. They had long heard that Empress Starrain had a capable advisor by her side. Poaching all of them was the work of this advisor. "Greetings, Mr. Su." They all greeted him. However, some of the tunnel masters did not move. Among them, Quan was the leader. They stood with their arms crossed, not giving Su Yu any face. Empress Starrain looked over, frowning silently. She would leave the following matters to Su Yu, and she would try her best not to interfere. Su Yu smiled faintly and said, "Thank you, everyone, for coming to lend the Empress a hand. I, Su, am eternally grateful." He swept his gaze across the crowd. When his gaze landed on Quan's group, he discovered that the 300 of them had formed a small circle and did not interact with the other tunnel masters. Furthermore, his attitude towards him seemed to contain a hint of rejection, especially one of the young men, who looked at him with a playful expression. Su Yu glanced at him as if he hadn't noticed. He continued, "Today, I'm here to select 10 guards for the Empress who are qualified in terms of capability, temperament, and loyalty." After a pause, he said, "The Imperial Guards' pay will also be doubled." Hearing this, all the Dao masters present erupted into an uproar. Their monthly offerings were already an astronomical figure. The personal guards actually doubled the number. Those who are interested can sign up now. Me? I. The crowd burst into an uproar, and Su Yu recorded the names of all the applicants in an orderly manner. But the 300 disciples turned a deaf ear to him. Su Yu looked at them and asked, "Are all of you not willing?" It was as if Quan had been waiting for this sentence. He opened his folding fan with a fake smile and waved it lightly. "Of course we are willing to serve the Empress, but we do not wish to be humiliated." The Dao masters behind him all revealed playful smiles. It was as if they were watching a good show. So you put down the name list and said, "Oh, humiliated? Who humiliated you?" Quan laughed. "Mr. Su, of course. Why do you say that?" Su Yu was calm and composed, not angered. Quan said in a strange tone, "Mr. Su, with your meager cultivation base, you are here to test if we are qualified to become the Empress's guards. If this is not humiliation, what is?" He closed the folding fan in his hands and said calmly, "We are here to serve the Empress, not to bend our knees and allow ourselves to be trampled on by others." Actually, these words were what many of the Dao masters were thinking. They were all Dao masters. What was Su Yu? Not to mention the human race, his cultivation base was appallingly low. Why did he have to stand on their heads and act arrogantly? There were many who were unconvinced. Trample on? Su Yu laughed lightly. Quan could not understand the helplessness and contempt in Su Yu's laughter. He stood calmly and said, "I am not talented. I was once the advisor of the waning moon Empress. My abilities are 10 times, 100 times better than yours. If you are unconvinced, you can compete with me," Quan said confidently. Now, in front of the Starrain Empress, he wanted to crush Su Yu in all aspects. Presumably, the Starrain Empress would understand his importance and replace Su Yu as the person beside the Empress. Following that, he would advance step by step and obtain the Empress's body and heart. He already had a clear and detailed plan in his mind. "All right, let's compete in what you are best at," Su Yu said simply. He did not hesitate in the slightest. Quan was slightly stunned. He had thought that Su Yu would hesitate. He did not expect him to be so straightforward. "I did not know that you were quite confident in yourself." Quan looked at Su Yu thoughtfully. He did not understand where Su Yu's confidence came from. He was a strong martial artist at the level of a roadmaster, as well as the senior advisor of the waning moon Empress. No matter how he looked at it, he was stronger than Su Yu in all aspects. "Enough with the nonsense. Tell me, what are you best at?" Su Yu asked indifferently. Quan chuckled. What he was best at was his cultivation level. But in comparison, would Su Yu have the ability to resist? "I do not bully others." "All right, let's first come up with a plan. Let's see who is better." Quan casually tossed out 100 scrolls, appearing in front of the crowd. Quan said proudly, "These scrolls contain the 100 important matters that I have dealt with in my life. Every one of them was handled perfectly, and I have won the praise of the waning moon Empress. If you can solve 10 of them, I will admit defeat." The roadmasters behind him secretly shook their heads. In Quan's abilities were indeed brilliant. He had dealt with many troublesome matters. The matters recorded in the 100 scrolls were all exceptionally difficult matters. It would be difficult for an ordinary person to solve one of them in a short period of time. Moreover, he had to solve 10 of them. In order to take care of you, I will give you an extra day to consider, In Quan said calmly. So you did not say a word, flipping open the scrolls. He glanced through the first scroll, then the second, the third, the fourth. When he was done, Suyu creased his brows and asked, "Are you sure you did not take the wrong scrolls?" In Quan froze for a moment, flipping through them simply. "Am I wrong?" Suyu said, "Didn't you say that these were exceptionally troublesome matters? Why are they all trivial matters? For example, there was a scroll that recorded the betrayal of a person carrying important information. In Suyu's eyes, this was a trivial matter. Chapter 2682. Trivial Matters. In Quan laughed. He had thought that Suyu would be shocked by his various abilities. Who knew that Suyu would casually say that these were trivial matters? Anyone the scrolls would be enough to give a roadmaster a headache. He did not know where Suyu got the courage to say that these were trivial matters. You really think too highly of yourself. In Quan shook his folding fan and said, "Since you are so confident in yourself, then please solve 10 of them within a day." He looked at Suyu calmly, wanting to see how Suyu would embarrass himself in front of the crowd. However, Suyu only casually raised his brush and casually left a few strokes on the scrolls. Every scroll was the same. Suyu used less than a joss stick's time to finish reading all 100 scrolls. These trivial matters are a waste of time. Suyu put down his brush, frowning. Your so-called test is, frankly speaking, quite childish. In Quan was stunned. You have solved it just like that. His face was filled with anger. You're good at insulting people. Just a few strokes of the brush was enough to solve an extremely complicated file? Suyu calmly said, "If I were you, I would have flipped through the scrolls long ago if I had the time to dilly-dally." In Quan squeezed his folding fan, laughing angrily. "All right, but don't just let me read it. Everyone, take a look." With a wave of his folding fan, all the scrolls flew into the air and unfurled before the eyes of the crowd. The crowd swept their eyes over the scrolls, clearly seeing the words Suyu had written. But the crowd, who had been waiting to see a joke, were all stunned. This was because, according to the scroll, the solution that Suyu had provided was simply flawless. Although there were only a few lines of words, every word hit the nail on the head. Look at that scroll. I remember that In Quan's solution was to save 9 of the 18 hostages. But if we had followed Suyu's method, we could have guaranteed the survival of at least 12 hostages. It looks like In Quan's solution was too thoughtless. And this scroll, look. The crowd's eyes were bright. Looking at the same scroll, it was clear whose solution was better. The sneer on In Quan's face slowly disappeared, replaced by a stiff expression. Even he had to admit that Suyu's solution was far more brilliant than his. It would have been fine if only 1 or 2 scrolls were like that, but all the scrolls were like that. That would be too shocking. The most frightening thing was that Suyu had completed it within the time it took for an incense stick to burn. 1 incense stick's worth of time. How much experience did he have to have been able to handle all the files almost perfectly in such a short period of time? Suyu's face was expressionless, and he quietly waited for the crowd to finish reading. He then asked, "Now, who else is still unconvinced?" The way the rest of the people looked at Suyu finally changed. This person was not as incompetent as In Quan made him out to be. On the contrary, he was full of wisdom and was an extremely scheming person. In Quan felt a little embarrassed, but when he noticed Empress Star Rain casting him a gloating look, he gritted his teeth and said, "What are you so happy about? I haven't even used what I'm best at." He wasn't talking about the Star Rain Empress, but Suyu. "Am I happy?" Suyu asked calmly. "I don't need to be happy just to settle a trivial matter." These words were particularly harsh to In Quan's ears. Just now, wasn't In Quan gloating over the fact that he had solved 100 scrolls? The one with the surname Su, do not insult others. In Quan released the powerful cultivation level of an Earth Master and stared at Suyu. Suyu's expression was calm. If speaking the truth is considered humiliating, then I can only say that you are too weak. No matter how weak I am still stronger than a nirvana realm human like you. Quan let out a roar and charged forward. Suyu stood on the spot, not moving an inch. Strength is what you're best at, right? Wouldn't it have been better if he had done this earlier? Why do you have to seek your own humiliation? Suyu asked calmly. After a pause, he continued, but if we compete in strength, you're still asking to be humiliated. With a flick of his finger, 3 flying needles shot out. One of them had a very ordinary trajectory and was easily dodged. As for the other 2, one contained the time domain, while the other contained the space domain. How can Quan deal with them so easily? With a blood-curdling scream, 2-minute needles pierced through his body. In an instant, Quan let out a blood-curdling scream. His soul had been severely injured. He lay on the ground, rolling around with his head in his hands, screaming incessantly. Swish! After retrieving the 3 flying needles, Suyu looked at Quan and shook his head. You dare challenge me with such meager abilities? He lifted his gaze and looked at the 300 or so Earth Masters behind Quan. All of them averted their gazes fearfully. Those 3 flying needles were indeed strange. All right, that's all for the recruitment list for the guards. I will choose the qualified ones from among them. Suyu carried the list and turned to leave with Empress Starrain. The Earth Masters looked at each other in dismay. Was the selection over just like that? He had not even asked about their specific strengths and special abilities. In the space, time passed in a flash. 3 days later, all of a sudden, the sound of intense fighting could be heard from outside the space. It was as if some extraordinarily powerful person had charged in from outside. With a boom, the space was shattered. Several people with powerful cultivations appeared. Empress Waning Moon and Ada, Air, and Asan were among them. Great Emperor Xiaohao and Yinran were among them. In Great Emperor Xiaohao's hand was the head of Empress Starrain. The boundless smell of blood and the sound of fighting swept in from outside. Haha, so there's still a group of survivors here. Great Emperor Xiaohao sneered. Kill them all, leave no one alive. All of a sudden, everyone panicked. What was going on? Had the fight for the time master begun in advance? Empress Starrain's death had caught them off guard. Some of them chose to fight with their lives on the line. But there was also a group of people who thought for a moment and chose to surrender. Only a few of them were thinking calmly. Very well, those who surrender will be spared. Empress Waning Moon said coldly. Quan immediately smiled and led the 300 Earth Masters forward. He said respectfully, Greetings, Your Majesty. Empress Waning Moon looked down at him from above, her brows arched. Why are you here? Quan said hurriedly, Your Majesty, I am here to be a spy for you. Have you forgotten? As he spoke, he hurriedly took out the secret letter hidden under his skin. When he unfolded it, he could clearly see that Empress Waning Moon's handwritten secret letter was inside. She ordered Quan to lead a group of people and pretend to surrender. She wanted to find out who was secretly controlling the dream domain and wait for an opportunity to act. That was why Quan dared to set his sights on Empress Starrain. His goal was to wait for an opportunity to act. Chapter 2683. This snort frightened the 300 underworld lords behind him into hurriedly taking out their identity tokens, indicating that they were acting under orders. He had no intention of betraying the Waning Moon Empress. The other group was Emperor Xiaohao's spies. Everyone revealed themselves and introduced themselves. Very good. Follow me, Empress Waning Moon and Emperor Xiaohao said in unison. Everyone heaved a long sigh of relief and looked at the Earth Lords left behind in the space with pity in their eyes. Their fate was clear. Only death awaited them. As for you, when everyone had left, Emperor Xiaohao stood at the gap and looked at them with disdain. This filled their faces with despair. She had just joined Empress Starrain when she was killed. Was there anyone more unlucky than this? At this moment, they wanted to cry, but had no tears. However, Emperor Xiaohao's tone suddenly changed. Congratulations, you have passed the test. The strongest among you will be chosen to serve as Empress Starrain's personal guard. Hearing this, they were dumbfounded. They had no idea what was going on. On the other hand, the 400 or so Earth Tunnel Masters who had left the space were stunned. Assessment? Just then, they left the space, and the situation of the foreigners became clear to them. As he swept his gaze across the area, his expression changed. Empress Star Reign's residence was peaceful and serene. Where was the slightest trace of a great battle? Moreover, Empress Star Reign was still alive. In the yard in front of him, Suyu was sitting quietly on a chair with his legs crossed. Empress Star Reign massaged his shoulders and back. Mr. Su sure has a way to force out so many problematic tunnel lords. Empress Star Reign was secretly shocked. He had thought that it was an individual like Ying Quan who had a problem, who knew that there would be so many spies in one go. He had underestimated the waning Moon Empress and Emperor Xiaohao. Did they think that they could easily poach their people? Who would have thought that they would secretly send a needle? If it was time for the Time Dominator's war, they would change sides. The consequences would be terrifying. She had invited Suyu to test them, which was a wise decision. You guys, Ying Quan immediately understood what was going on. What he didn't understand was that everything just now wasn't an illusion. But why did it feel so real? You managed to figure it out so easily? I really overestimated you, Suyu said calmly. Ying Quan narrowed his eyes. Since it was exposed, what else was there to explain? Kill this man, Ying Quan bellowed. It was only after coming into contact with Suyu that he realized how terrifying Suyu was. He had hidden his strength well. With such a person by Empress Star Reign's side, there would be no end of trouble. However, could Empress Star Reign force them to act? You don't have the right to act as you please in my mansion. She formed a seal with her hands and immediately activated the mansion's formation. That was a mid-stage Dao Lord level formation, and it was used to defend against external enemies. A 5-colored energy net fell from the sky. It enveloped everyone who had just come out. Ying Quan did not panic. He sneered and said, "There are so many of us. Why would we be afraid of a mere formation of yours? If it was a formation at the level of a heavenly Dao Master, the 400 or so Dao Masters would naturally be helpless against it. Unfortunately, this was only a mid-stage Dao Lord. Break!" Ying Quan bellowed angrily. Together with the others, they exerted their strength and instantly tore apart the giant net. Then, like a tidal wave, they rushed towards Suyu. However, Suyu remained motionless. There was not the slightest bit of fear on his face. He casually took out a small cauldron and tossed it into the air. Suddenly, the small cauldron grew to a size of 10,000 feet. With a thud, it descended and trapped all of them within it. Then, Suyu activated the 8 great domains. Using the domains as fire, he refined them on the spot. In an instant, screams filled the air. Within the divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron, they exerted all their strength in an attempt to break out of it. The divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron shook incessantly, as if it was about to be opened. Suppress. Suyu casually tossed out a cauldron of the 8 great domains. The 2 cauldrons overlapped, suppressing much of the resistance. However, they were, after all, more than 400 Dao Masters. With Suyu's strength, he could not completely suppress them. When they gradually calmed down from their panic and began to work together, the divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron began to show signs of breaking apart. "What are you waiting for?" Suyu said calmly. "Come and help." Within the space, the group of Dao Masters came out in a line. Under Suyu's command, they exerted all their strength to suppress the resistance. There were more than 800 of them. Working together to suppress the resistance of more than 400 people was a piece of cake. Thump! Thump! In the end, only the sound of raindrops could be heard coming from within the divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron. The divine cauldron was as stable as Mount Tai and could not be shaken anymore. 10 days later, the sound of raindrops became much weaker. A month later, only a few sounds of knocking could be heard. Half a year later, the inside was deathly still, and a large amount of black smoke began to rise from it. A whole year later, the last wisp of smoke dissipated from within. Exhausted, the many Earth Road Masters withdrew their Earth Road Master powers. Suyu stood up and waved at the air. The divine nine-dragon cauldron shrank continuously until it was the size of a palm, and returned to his palm. Fortunately, he had secretly used the secret technique passed down by the ancient god Julong to change the shape of the divine nine-dragon cauldron. Therefore, none of the 800 Tao masters before him recognized that it was the divine nine-dragon cauldron. Lowering his head, he saw that the interior of the cauldron was filled with thumb-sized crystal balls. Each of them represented a Tao master's lifetime cultivation and great path. Suyu suppressed his desire to swallow them all, took out 10 of them, and said, "These 10 people, I will reward each of them with one." He called out their names one by one. Those whose names were called out were the ones who had been exceptionally calm and steady during the assessment. They had not surrendered, nor had they rebelled a second time. To be able to calmly determine the truth of a matter in a crisis was enough to prove that they were qualified to be Empress Star Reign's personal guards. The 10 Tao masters were slightly stunned, not understanding what it was. Swallow it. They hesitated for a moment, then tried to swallow it into their stomachs. In the end, they were overjoyed to find that their cultivation, which had stagnated for countless years, was rising rapidly. There was even an elderly Earth Roadmaster who had reached the peak of the Earth Roadmaster in one go, and was on par with Fei Yunshin. The other 9 Tao Masters had also made tremendous progress. "Mr. Su, what is this?" The 10 Tao Masters were excited. Suyu replied calmly, "It is a type of reward that you can obtain again if you perform well." He did not mention what it was. They did not need to be concerned about it, because what they were concerned about was how they could obtain it again. "Mr. Su, what about us?" The remaining Tao Masters were so jealous that their eyes had turned red. "Oh my God, is there a better resource than this? One of them can reach the peak of the early stage." Suyu's lips curled up, and he laughed softly. "That will depend on your performance in 4 years' time. In 4 years' time, it will be the time to contest for the Time Master. That moment would come very soon." Chapter 2684. After settling the matter of the recruited Underground Master, Suyu no longer had any worries. After accompanying Qin Xianer and Su Kai for a few days, he went into seclusion. He took out Xiaohao's time acceleration artifact and activated it. Instantly, the time in the secret room sped up by 10,000 times. 40,000 years here was only 4 years in the outside world. This was the longest secluded cultivation Suyu had ever experienced in his life. Taking a deep breath, Suyu took out a thick stack of information about the Nightmare Crossing Lotus Throne. He would strive to completely master the cultivation method of the Nightmare Crossing Lotus Throne within 40,000 years. He weaved signs with one hand, and another Suyu, who looked exactly like him, appeared beside him. It was a doppelganger formed from his soul. Leave the matter of comprehending the crossing abyss lotus to him. As for the main body, with a thought, Suyu entered the storage space that he carried with him. There, a lifelike snow-white fox was lying there peacefully. She was beautiful and noble, making people want to worship her. Of the 8 tails behind it, one of them had been cut off and was nowhere to be found. Suyu waved his palm, and the severed tail flew over and landed on his palm. Back then, the remnant soul of the 9-tailed heavenly prince had tricked Suyu into bringing her and her corpse to the demon realm. It was all for the sake of reuniting its body and the last piece of its tail that had been lost. This way, the remnant soul would be able to completely control the corpse and indirectly revive the 9-tailed heavenly emperor. It was a pity that Suyu had seen through it and destroyed it. After so many years, Suyu faced the corpse of the 9-tailed emperor again. The blood of the emperor can be used as the oil in the sacred mortal body oil lamp. He murmured, "The Buddha of 10,000 lanterns gave me the light with all his power, but he didn't give me the oil to keep the flame burning." At this moment, he somewhat understood why the oil lamp had withered. A rootless fire could only burn for a while. As long as the oil was always there, the light would never be extinguished. Half a drop of the emperor's blood was only enough to maintain the lamp for an hour. Therefore, he needed more. He had tried to move the body of the 9-tailed emperor, but with his current ability, he could not even move it. Wanting to refine the blood of the emperor from it was as difficult as ascending to heaven. However, this broken tail could still be tried. Suyu took out the divine nine-dragon cauldron. He placed the broken tail inside and used the 8 domains as flames to refine it. Time flowed like water. In the accelerated state, 10 years passed in a flash. Suyu's body was covered with dust. Day after day, he continued to refine the tail. However, 10 years had passed. His tail was still broken. There was no sign of it being refined at all. Even the color of its fur did not change. It was as if all of Suyu's efforts over the past 10 years had been in vain. But he did not give up. The oil lamp was one of the most powerful weapons in his life as a sacred mortal body cultivator. As long as there was a shred of hope, they would definitely not let it go. Another 10 years passed, but the tail was still the same. 30 years had passed. 40 years passed. 50 years passed. After 100 years, the tail finally showed some changes. A faint greenish-black color began to appear on the snow-white fur. After a full 100 years, he had only managed to refine the hair to the point where there was a slight change. Half of Suyu's body had already been buried by the scattered dust of the past 6 months. If it wasn't for the fact that he controlled the domain fire, it would have burned continuously and steadily. They had to wonder if he was still alive. Thus, the refinement continued in an orderly manner. Another 100 years passed. The boredom did not defeat Suyu, nor did it make him have the idea of giving up. The color of the fur of the severed tail was already black, but it was still a long way from being refined into the Emperor's blood. 300 years passed. 400 years passed. A full 1,000 years passed. The space had already been turned upside down, and countless creatures had already completed dozens of births and deaths. The place where Suyu had been buried by the dust, becoming a small hill in the natural evolution. In the hill, the severed tail finally showed a very obvious change. All of its hair was refined until it withered and fell off, turning into black smoke and dust. All that was left was the bare foxtail. 1,000 years had passed, and only the skin had been refined. The skin had to be refined in order to see the Emperor's blood. The difficulty of refining the skin would be several times that of refining the hair. So you took a deep breath and once again fell into the endless boring refinement. 1,000 years passed. The skin of the fox's tail only revealed a little bit of burn. It was unknown how many years it would take before it was completely melted. Tens of thousands of years passed silently. The small hill where Suyu had become a mountain. In the mountain, in the divine nine-dragon cauldron in front of Suyu, the skin of the foxtail had been completely burned black. However, there was still no trace of the Emperor's blood that had been refined. 10,000 years of hard work was likely to be in vain. Suyu's heart could not help but be shaken. Sacrificing so much in exchange for failure? Never. There was a great rebellious will in his heart. If 10,000 years did not work, then 20,000 years would not work until the Emperor's blood was refined. Clenching his teeth, Suyu continued to refine. Another 10,000 years passed. The skin of the tail was only more charred, but there was still no Emperor's blood. Suyu was determined that he would not give up until the time acceleration ended. 30,000 years passed. The skin was as black as charcoal. When the 40,000 years passed, finally, with a cautious sound, a hair-thin crack appeared on the black fox skin that was like charcoal. A trace of 9-colored blood slowly overflowed from it. The Emperor's blood. Suyu suddenly opened his eyes, and there was a hint of joy in his eyes. After 40,000 years of continuous refining, he finally succeeded. He immediately put away the first drop of Emperor's blood. When he noticed that the time acceleration was slowly receding, he immediately seized the time to continue refining. 1,000 years later, the second drop of Emperor's blood was refined. 500 years later, the third drop of Emperor's blood was refined. 100 years later, the fourth drop of Emperor's blood was refined. As the refining continued, the layer of skin became more and more fragile, and it became easier to refine the Emperor's blood. Unfortunately, the effect of the time acceleration treasure finally ended. The time in the secret room was the same as the outside world. This meant that the 4-year period had arrived. The battle for the Time Master was about to begin, so you could only put it aside for the time being. However, After 40,000 years of refining, this layer of fox skin was becoming more and more fragile. In the future, with his own ability to accelerate time 1,000 times, he could refine a drop of Emperor's blood in about half a year. His 40,000 years of hard work was not in vain. He looked at the clone again. As early as 100 years ago, the clone had already stopped learning, because all the books were learned in 40,000 years. Return. The order was given. The clone returned to the main body. Suyu rubbed his extremely tired head and slowly walked out of the secret room. After 40,000 years, there was a layer of vicissitudes and steadiness in his eyes that had never been there before. Outside the secret room, the 800 underground masters, the Star Reign Empress, Qin Xian'er, Su Kai-er, and the others were waiting outside the door. Welcome back, Mr. Su, husband, father. Chapter 2685. Suyu felt a sense of closeness. To them, it had only been 4 years. But to Suyu, it was 40,000 years. He touched Su Kai-er's head tenderly. A few years had passed, and Su Kai-er was now an 18-year-old girl. She had inherited Qin Xian'er's ethereal beauty. This is for you. Suyu took out a jade seal. It was the original handprint of the Greater One sect. Furthermore, he had given him countless time crystals. I'll keep it for self-defense. Su Kai already had a defensive treasure of the Heavenly Law Master level. But those were one-time consumables. The handprint of the faction could be activated in times of crisis, bursting with amazing potential. Thank you, Father. Perhaps because they hadn't seen each other for many years, Su Kai-er looked forward to it. Looking at the familiar face in front of him, Suyu had a strong desire to protect them. Even if it was not for himself, he would fight for them. Whoosh! The bleak sound of a horn blew slowly from the direction of the distant sacred city. The sky changed color. Countless flying birds fell, not daring to fly in the air. The beasts on the ground hurriedly returned to their nests, not daring to linger outside. Countless martial artists in the wild returned to the nearby cities with a sudden change of expression, curling up and not daring to go out. Factions of all sizes chose to close their gates and activate the great formation of the faction. Even immortals stopped their activities and shut themselves in. The heavens and the earth were silent. An invisible pressure slowly pressed down like heavy air, making it hard for the living beings in heaven and earth to breathe. Only in the cities of the descendants of the 4 rulers of the dream-divided realm, the roars of many powerful men could be heard. It was as if they were responding to the bleak sound of the horn, responding to the approaching war. The weak body of the Star Reign Empress trembled slightly. She murmured, "It's about to begin." The war that concerned the survival of the descendants of the rulers was about to begin. Suyu looked up. He clearly felt that the time domain that enveloped the southern part of the dream-divided realm was rapidly thinning and fading. That meant that the Time Master was dying. Once the time domain was completely dispersed, once the Time Master was completely dead, the world would no longer have the power to suppress the descendants of the Time Master. A fight to the death was unavoidable. Dongming City. Emperor Mindful stared at the sky and clenched his fists tightly. His eyes shone with a strong will to fight. Fight with all your might and die without regrets. Emperor Mindful yelled in high spirits. In the city, thousands of underworld lords gathered around him and shouted in unison. The Mindful Emperor will definitely become the ruler. Killing intent and baleful chi condensed into a primordial battle intent that swept into the sky. At that time, Shiming City, the waning Moon Empress stood in the sky. Her peerless figure and majestic aura pressed down on the vast expanse. I am the true ruler. The countless gathered followers let out a heaven-shaking roar. It was like a long arrow waiting to be shot. North Ming City. The city was in ruins. Not even a shadow could be seen. Emperor Xiaohao was nowhere to be found, and the experts around him were nowhere to be seen. Before the battle had even begun, Baiming City had already suffered great losses because of Suyu. In a dark room, Xiaohao and dozens of Dao masters stayed in a small, narrow room. The atmosphere was heavy. The only people Xiaohao could trust were those around him. They were the only ones he could rely on. Everyone, please calm down. But Xiaohao was very calm. Fighting for the world is not something that can be done in a short period of time. I already have a plan. Now, we only need to conserve our energy and wait for the right time to kill our way out. The dozens of Dao masters forced themselves to stay alert, but they could not force a smile on their faces. Xiaohao was already in such dire straits. What else could Xiaohao rely on? Unexpectedly, Xiaohao smiled confidently. Do you really think that Xiaohao, am so weak? From the beginning, my focus was not on the dream-divided realm, but the other two realms. The power of the dream-divided realm is but the tip of the iceberg. He revealed a great secret, causing everyone to become alert. Lord Xiaohao, could it be that you? Xiaohao smiled mysteriously, playing hard to get, pretending to be weak. By the time those three fools from the dream-divided realm react, it will already be too late. His laughter penetrated the secret chamber and reached the 9 heavens. Half a month later, the time domain became thinner and thinner. The hourglasses of time above the heads of all living beings were weakening at a speed visible to the naked eye. So you said seriously, get ready. Everyone nodded and waited patiently. Finally, 3 days, 4 hours, and a joss-stick's time had passed. The hourglasses of time had completely shattered. The master is dead. A new master shall be appointed. Empress Star Rain rose to her high position, waving her arms and shouting. The 800 or so Dao masters under her command roared in response. Clang! Empress Star Rain pulled out the long sword in her hand and pointed from afar. The sword points to Dongming City. Everyone was stunned. Didn't Dongming City sign an alliance with Nanming City? Why did they turn against each other from the very beginning? But where the sword pointed, their footsteps would follow. Kill! The wheels of war finally began to move. Nanming City mobilized all its forces and headed straight for Dongming City. At the same time, all kinds of intelligence personnel were at their most active peak. In every city, there were intelligence personnel from other cities secretly passing on information. In a short period of time, no less than 10,000 messages were transmitted from Nanming City, reaching every corner of the dream-divided realm. For a moment, the entire dream-divided realm was shocked. The two forces were originally allies. Why did they break the agreement and start killing each other at the first moment? The Waning Moon Empress was greatly surprised when she received the news. It was within her expectations. Nanming City and Dongming City should have joined forces to deal with Westming City or Northming City together. She never thought that Nanming City would break the agreement and take the initiative to attack Dongming City. What was even more surprising was that Nanming City was the weakest city. Not only did they not choose to form an alliance, they put themselves in the whirlpool of war. It was truly irrational. How many Dao masters did Nanming City lead? Waning Moon Empress asked. It wasn't that she intentionally looked down on Nanming City. Rather, Nanming City was indeed too weak. They probably couldn't even find a few decent Dao masters. A total of more than 800 Dao masters. What? Waning Moon's beautiful eyes suddenly widened. How many? 800? Yes, many intelligence personnel gave the same information. Waning Moon Empress took a deep breath. In the end, I still underestimated that little girl. So she was the one who hid the most. All along, I thought that it was Emperor Mindful who secretly bribed the Dao Masters. I didn't expect it to be her. After pondering for a long time, Waning Moon Empress said in relief, no wonder she attacked Dongming City at the beginning. That little girl hid so deeply. She just wanted to catch Dongming City off guard, right? First, she used the alliance to stabilize the other side, then secretly accumulated power to give Dongming City an unexpected fatal blow. Chapter 2686. Empress, why don't we take this opportunity to attack Empress Star Rain's Nanming City? An advisor suggested after careful consideration. This was Nanming City's weakest moment. If they could take it down in one fell swoop, Empress Star Rain would have no way out. The Waning Moon Empress shook her head slightly. What's the point of taking over Nanming City? This was not a mortal war to besiege a city. It was a battle of bloodlines to take people's lives. Only by killing Empress Starrain could they get a chance to advance. Therefore, their target should be Empress Starrain. Let's wait and see if the two sides really fight. The waning moon Empress narrowed her eyes. She was very cautious and would not act rashly. After all, what if Empress Starrain and Emperor Mingxin were deliberately putting on a show for her? Yes, at that time, the army of Nanming City was marching eastward. The people of Dongming City were panicking. Even a mindful emperor himself was shocked. This was because Nanming City's side had indeed not discussed this matter with him beforehand. They had suddenly attacked. Emperor, Nanming City has broken the alliance. What were we waiting for? Send out our troops to fight. This was a war of life and death. There was not the slightest room for retreat. Emperor Mindheart's eyes revealed a deep struggle. No, no. If Suyu had been stalling from the beginning, why would he have given him such a precious treasure? Emperor Mingxin was a man who was very good at thinking. After thinking for a long time, he calmed down. An imperceptible smile blossomed on his lips. I see. Suyu wanted to argue with him to deceive the outsiders. Then he would give them a surprise attack. Send out our troops to fight. Emperor Mingxin made up his mind. Suddenly, Dongming City's hidden power was revealed. More than 1,000 tunnel masters emerged from their hiding places and charged towards the attacking Nanming City army. Both sides fought with all their might, not holding anything back. The battle was fierce, blood flying everywhere. Countless lives were taken on the battlefield. It was tragic and desolate. In a single day, there were hundreds of underworld lords who had died in extremely tragic battles. Most of them came from Nanming City. Only a few belonged to Dongming City. At the same time, countless pieces of information flew towards Nanming City like pieces of paper. The waning moon queen nervously analyzed the information. Over 300 tunnel masters died in a single day. The waning moon empress gasped. This number was truly terrifying. They're really fighting. The waning moon empress immediately came to a conclusion. However, why are the majority of the casualties on Bright South City's side? Nanming City couldn't possibly send their 300 down masters to their deaths just to put on a show, right? After pondering for a long time, she finally made up her mind. Come, all soldiers of West Bright City, follow me. The waning moon empress summoned the entire army of West Bright City. About 900 down masters followed the waning moon empress as they charged towards Eastern Brightness City. At the same time, a vanguard team rushed to Dongming City. While the two sides were resting, a letter personally written by the waning moon empress landed in front of the Mindheart Emperor. After reading the letter, a trace of smile appeared on Emperor Mindful's face. It was just as Suyu had expected. The waning moon queen would definitely take the bait. With a wave of his brush, he wrote a detailed letter about the alliance and ordered the messenger to bring it back. After receiving the letter, the waning moon empress calmed down. According to the agreement, the great battle the next day, the waning moon empress's army would attack Nanming City from behind. Together with Dongming City, they would completely annihilate Nanming City. The next day, after resting for a day, Dongming City and Nanming City resumed their battle. The Star Rain Empress stared at the Mindheart Emperor and said, "Today is the day of our decisive battle." The Mindheart Emperor let out a long laugh. Bring it on. The two sides clashed once again. At that moment, blood sprayed into the sky. There were many casualties. The two sides' abilities were about the same. Thus, they quickly fell into a stalemate. No one could do anything to the other. But at that moment, behind Nanming City, countless strong fighters suddenly appeared. The waning moon empress, surrounded by strong fighters, sent out a signal to charge towards Nanming City. Anyone who kills one person will be rewarded with 10 billion time crystals. With such a huge reward, her subordinates became even more courageous. They were like tigers in a flock of sheep, charging into Nanming City and starting a massacre. In an instant, Nanming City was caught in a situation where it was attacked from both sides. The originally orderly battle line immediately became chaotic. The Star Rain Empress was flustered as she commanded the two sides. but she was overstretched. Her own people were being routed layer by layer. They couldn't stop the powerful alliance of the two sides. Seeing this, the waning Moon Empress' eyes turned sharp. She shouted, "Kill!" Her troops were like a sharp spear, stabbing towards the Star Rain Empress, who was surrounded by the Nanming City army. If she could kill the Star Rain Empress first, she could obtain the Star Rain Empress time domain bloodline to strengthen herself. On the other hand, the Mindheart Emperor was still focused on the overall situation of the battlefield. He didn't seem to know the importance of killing. Close. 10,000 feet. 3,000 feet. 100 feet. Right in front of her, the waning Moon Empress licked her lips. She would be the first to win this battle. "Sister, goodbye." A cruel glint flashed in the waning Moon Empress' eyes. Under the protection of dozens of guards, she charged forward. However, the waning Moon Empress didn't understand. The Star Rain Empress regained her composure and stood motionlessly in place. The guards around her seemed to have lost consciousness and didn't know how to protect her. Wait, something's wrong. The waning Moon Empress had an extremely bad premonition. Retreat. Quickly. She was extremely cautious and reacted very quickly. However, she was still one step too late. The Star Rain Empress in front of her, her guards, and the countless Nanming City tunnel masters who were fighting were all shattered like illusions. The remaining Nanming City and Dongming City tunnel masters were at a loss and didn't know what to do. The Southern Ming City's experts, who were locked in a stalemate with him just a moment ago, suddenly disappeared. "Kill!" A battle cry came from behind the waning Moon Empress. The Star Rain Empress was riding a magic treasure chariot. Under the protection of 100 Earthdown Masters, she led 800 Earthdown Masters to attack. On top of Dongming City, the Mindheart Emperor laughed. "You've entered the trap. Our mission is complete. Soldiers of Dongming City, listen up. Immediately eliminate the powerful enemies of Nanming City." Thus, the many experts of Nanming City fell into the pincer attack of Dongming City and Nanming City. The waning Moon Empress felt as if she had been struck by thousands of lightning bolts. She finally understood what was going on. The alliance between the two sides was still there and hadn't been broken. Everything was an act for her to see. As for the casualties of Nanming City, they were all illusions created by a thought. She had mistakenly believed that it was real. As a result, she fell into the trap of the two sides and became a turtle in a jar. Thinking of this, the waning Moon Empress' heart erupted like a volcano. You set me up." The waning Moon Empress took out a ruler magic treasure that was in existence on the level of a Heaven-Down Master. With just one move, he could turn Dongming City and countless experts into ruins. Chapter 2687. Empress Star Rain wasn't afraid. She calmly took out a jade pendant from her sleeve. It was a defensive treasure of the Heavenly Law Lord level. It could completely block the Empress attack. Empress Star Rain smiled and said, "Hee, it's fine. Just use it." Above the city walls, Emperor Mindheart took out a defensive artifact. It was also a treasure of the sovereign level. Emperor Mindheart chuckled. "Sister, just use it. It's all your people who will die." Both sides had defensive magic treasures that could completely protect their own people. But Empress Waning Moon, once it was activated, apart from herself, everyone around her would die. Her pupils shrank. Why? Why does South Bright City have it too? She understood that East Bright City had it. She already knew that it was given by Xiaohao. But why did South Bright City have it too? Weren't all the treasures of the sovereign level controlled by Xiaohao? Could it be that the one in South Bright City was also given by Xiaohao? Empress Star Rain chuckled. "Sister, why are you asking so many questions? You just have to choose whether to surrender or not." Empress Waning Moon couldn't escape today. Surrender? In your dreams. Empress Waning Moon's eyes were cold. She decisively activated the treasure. With a devastating sound of destruction, the autonomous ruler's magic treasure suddenly exploded. A pillar of dust-colored light shot up into the sky. It dyed the entire sky like dusk. Under such a screen of light, everything was melting, and even time itself was decaying. The city walls collapsed, the plants withered, the earth became barren, and the sky aged. All of the living beings felt like time was passing by at an alarming rate. Empress Star Rain and Emperor Mindheart's faces were gloomy. They immediately activated their defensive treasures. The two light barriers each enveloped an area. Their people lived in peace. However, the powerhouses brought by the waning moon empress had their time sucked away, causing them to age at a visible rate. Then they died of natural causes. Their corpses also decayed at an alarming speed. Finally, they turned to ashes. Only Empress Waning Moon had a defensive treasure given by the Time Ruler. She didn't fear the passage of time. While the power of the offensive treasures was still there, neither side dared to leave the light barrier. Empress Waning Moon immediately fled to Westbright City. 10 days later, only then did the power of the Sovereign's attack finally recede. Apart from the two defensive areas, the surrounding area had already become a barren desert. All kinds of spirit veins, profound energy, spirit herbs, cities, everything was gone. What replaced it was an endless desert. It was hard to imagine that this place was Dongming City 10 days ago. Emperor Mindful sucked in a breath of cold air. So this is the attack of a ruler artifact. With a single thought, the world changed. Quickly chase after them. So you said, the waning moon empress was too crazy. If she was willing to fight, she could at least hold on for another 10 days or half a month. Even so, she continued to use her ruler treasure in a frenzy. Even if she had to sacrifice everyone, she would not hesitate, as long as she was alive. He thought about the sacred mortal body that the waning moon empress had secretly mastered and the remnant blood of the son of heaven in Madame Poison Life's body. Suyu's heart sank slightly. With her crazy temperament, she shouldn't do anything too crazy. Both sides joined forces and charged towards Shiming City. Just as he arrived at the border of Westbright City, he was ambushed by the remaining experts of Westbright City. But under the suppression of the two great armies, it was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. They looked down on everything along the way. Half a month later, the two great armies of Nanming City and Dongming City arrived at Shiming City. At this time, Shiming City had already activated its defensive light barrier. But what use was it under the attack of so many Path Masters? It would be destroyed in an instant. But the moment the defensive light barrier shattered, a trembling aura slowly spread out from the Empress' Great Hall. It was a human youth with his eyes closed. An ancient oil lamp floated above his head. The oil lamp emitted a weak light. Suddenly, the human youth's eyes opened, revealing traces of murderous intent. Sacred mortal body. Empress Star Rain and Emperor Mindful both recognized it and could not help but be shocked. Even they had heard of the terror of the sacred mortal body. It was existence comparable to the stone-born son of heaven. A female's cold laugh, came from the body of the sacred mortal body. I have waited a long time for this day. The sacred mortal body was one of her most well-hidden trump cards. She had always been looking forward to it. Compared to it, the power of those experts was far too weak. In these years, she had not only studied how to ignite the oil lamp of the sacred mortal body, but also how to control the corpse of the sacred mortal body. I will let you experience the power of the sacred mortal body. As the waning moon empress spoke, the oil lamp immediately exploded with a 9-colored light. The sacred mortal body turned into a 9-colored existence. God, Eye of Destruction. The corpse opened its eyes. Even its eyes were 9-colored. Wherever his gaze passed, the Earth Lords that came into contact with it were immediately scared out of their wits. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of Pathmasters had been killed. Emperor Mindful jumped in fright and hurriedly took out a low-level offensive ruler treasure. Destroy. It was a ring-shaped magical treasure. After activating it, a pillar of light no weaker than Dusk's attack descended from the sky. The beam of light descended from above with a loud rumble. It looked like it could pierce through the entire 8-star civilization. The space around the pillar of light shattered, revealing the defensive array of the 8-star civilization. Boom! The pillar of light came crashing down. The already fragmented space was completely destroyed, revealing a large area of the array. Under the bombardment of the pillar of light, the array shook continuously, and cracks appeared. Such an attack was unprecedented. It was the most powerful attack Su Yu had seen since coming to the 8-star civilization. Who could resist such an attack? However, when the pillar of light dissipated, revealing a completely shattered world, a dazzling 9-colored light was reflected in everyone's eyes. "He's not dead yet," Emperor Mindful said in shock. The sacred mortal body did not have the slightest injury on the surface. Only the 9-colored light on his body was slightly dimmer. "He, you have lost from the beginning." The waning moon empress sneered. "I had planned to leave you to deal with Xiaoao. Now, I will let you taste the despair of the sacred mortal body." She weaved her hands together. The entire world immediately erupted with 9-colored flames, roasting the surrounding world. In an instant, a large number of Pathmasters found that their bodies were constantly dissipating, turning into 9-colored light that merged into the flames. Left with no choice, the Star Rain Empress reluctantly took out a defensive ruler treasure to protect the people of both sides. However, what they did not expect was that low-level defensive ruler treasures did not work. Chapter 2688. Why is the holy mortal body so difficult to deal with? The Star Rain Empress angrily took out another ruler treasure. It was a mid-grade He-Gemin treasure. As soon as she threw it out, it began to rain heavily. The heavy rain was particularly special. Every drop of rain contained the time reversal domain. The boiling 9-colored flames were all extinguished by the rain. The injured people also recovered. The waning moon empress was a little surprised. "Where did you get so many ruler treasures?" Xiaohao might have given 1 or 2 low-level ruler treasures, but the mid-level ones could not be given to outsiders. "It's none of your business." The Star Rain Empress was furious. She took out a mid-level attack ruler treasure. It was a long spear that carried the time domain. Once it was activated, it erupted with even more terrifying power, piercing through time. The waning moon empress had no time to react before it shot into his chest. From afar, it looked like a long spear had pierced through the holy mortal body. However, he did not die. "You guys surprised me," the waning moon empress said in surprise. If she had not mastered the holy mortal body, the other party's endless ruler treasures would have been killed dozens of times. She would have killed him dozens of times. "Get lost," the waning moon empress shouted and slammed her palm on the ground. The long spear was forced out of her body. The terrifying power contained in the long spear did not diminish, and it completely pierced through the 8-star civilization's defensive formation. At the same time, the waning moon empress launched a third attack. 9 suns burned the sky. She made a seal with her palms, and a large amount of 9-colored light gushed out from her body. They rushed into the sky and turned into 9 huge 9-colored suns. Under the sunlight, everyone felt a burning heat. It was as if endless flames were rising from the inside out of their bodies. The Star Rain Empress gritted her teeth and took out a mid-level ruler treasure to defend herself. However, as soon as the defense appeared, it was burned by the 9-colored light. Even her own time bloodline was showing signs of boiling. This technique was really terrifying. They could not let the waning moon empress continue, or they would all die. "It's up to you." The Star Rain Empress took out a book very solemnly. It was a high-level attack ruler treasure given to her by Su Yu. If even this thing could not kill the holy mortal body, then they would be in danger. She opened the book. Lines of heavenly writing words shot out from the book. Those words imprinted themselves on the sacred mortal body, suppressing the 9-colored light emitting from his body. The waning moon empress suddenly opened her eyes, revealing a trace of shock. Even high-level ones. She couldn't fathom where Empress Star Rain had gotten so many treasures from the sovereigns. "Open." She tried to push the words away, but to no avail. The words of the heavenly book seemed to be branded in his body, and he could not shake them off. Because the 9-colored light on its body was weak, the 9 suns in the sky were also dim. The 2 sides regained their mobility and used killer moves to attack. No matter how strong the sacred mortal body was, it was still a person. How could he withstand the attacks that filled the sky? In addition, its 9-colored light was suppressed, so was unable to effectively defend against it. The waning moon empress clenched her teeth and flew away, leaving behind a long, nine-colored shadow. After him, Empress Star Rain gritted her teeth. Emperor Mindful's heart sank as well. They never expected the waning moon empress to be so difficult to deal with. They had thought that they had a large number of people and had more than a dozen sovereign treasures. Unexpectedly, she had hidden the sacred mortal body. Moreover, she had successfully fused herself with the sacred mortal body and reached a state of invincibility. They had wasted more than half of their sovereign treasures and still failed to capture the waning moon empress. The army went far away, so you chose to stay. With a thought, he arrived at the empress's great hall, which had been broken with great difficulty, and entered her bedroom with ease. After searching for a while, he found the entrance to the underground world. When he arrived, he was not surprised to see Madame Poisonlife. She was dying, and all the blood in her body had been drained. As expected, Suyu sighed softly and tried to repair her body with the domain of life. However, because of the long-term presence of the Emperor's blood in her blood, her constitution was different from ordinary people. The domain of life could repair other things, but it could not repair the missing blood. "Who are you?" Madame Poisonlife said weakly. Suyu took off his bamboo hat and sighed softly. "I should have advised you to leave that day." Unfortunately, there was no chance. With the ruthlessness of the waning moon empress, Madame Poisonlife was destined to become a sacrifice at the last moment. "It's you?" Madame Poisonlife struggled weakly, and her eyes brightened. She struggled to get up and said in surprise, "Lang Jun, you're not dead. I miss you even in my dreams." Suyu said lightly, "I was wrong. I shouldn't have come." Madame Poisonlife quickly grabbed his hand, and her face began to weaken again. She said, "I know that the waning moon empress is up to no good and will attack me sooner or later, but I can't help but be curious. I want to study the sacred mortal body." She looked at the holes in her body and the residual blood. "Maybe this is fate. I am destined to be associated with the sacred mortal body." Suyu's heart stirred. It was true. She met Suyu in the outer space. He met the corpse of the sacred mortal body in the 8-star civilization. In the end, he died because of the sacred mortal body. As she spoke, she took out a handwritten book and handed it to Suyu with trembling hands. "Help me pass it down. What is this?" Suyu did not open it. Madame Poisonlife seemed to be speaking with her last breath. She said with difficulty, "My study of the sacred mortal body. There are many things that the waning moon empress did not tell you. I hope you can help me pass it down to a sacred mortal body." At this point, Madame Poisonlife could no longer speak. She could only stare at Suyu with expectant eyes, waiting for his response. Suyu nodded and said, "You have handed it over to the sacred mortal body. Don't worry." With a move of his heart, a worn-out oil lamp appeared above his head. Madame Poisonlife's eyes widened, and she slowly closed them. A lingering smile appeared at the corner of her mouth, and she said weakly, "I see." Finally, she closed her eyes completely and stopped breathing. Suyu's calm mood was a little disturbed. In the past, he hated this person and even regarded her as an enemy. But in the end, she became the key to reigniting the oil lamp. Before he died, he even passed an important item to him. Rest in peace. Suyu used the 8 great realms to make her disappear from the world, erasing her existence. Looking at the handwritten book in his hand, he put away solemnly. He had to study it carefully. He knew nothing about the sacred mortal body. This handwritten book was exactly what he needed. But now is not the time. Chapter 2689. With a thought, he activated his space domain and crossed half of the western region. While the Star Rain Empress and the others were still in pursuit, Suyu had already caught up with the waning moon empress. On her body, the heavenly book characters that were suppressing her were rapidly dimming. The 9-colored light on his body shone brightly again. If she was given any more time, she would probably have to waste another high-grade Time Ruler artifact. The Divine 9-Dragon Cauldron. Suyu shouted in his heart. He took out the Divine 9-Dragon Cauldron. He used his domain to activate the Divine Cauldron, and the 8 flying dragons on it left the Divine Cauldron. He pushed the divine nine-dragon cauldron to spin rapidly. In the blink of an eye, the divine nine-dragon cauldron was like a red-hot soldering iron. Whoosh! There was a sharp sound as the divine nine-dragon cauldron crushed space and smashed into the waning moon queen. Bang! The waning moon queen staggered forward and was about to break through the nine-colored light. He was ruthlessly smashed back by this attack. The waning moon empress got up and turned around. Her eyes immediately became fierce, and she shouted, "It's you." Wasn't the person before him the human who had impersonated Zhu Wei and lied to him? Empress Star Rain remembered it even in her dreams. "Your Empress Star Rain subordinate?" The waning moon queen gritted her teeth. Suyu retrieved the divine nine-dragon cauldron, secretly surprised. The waning moon empress didn't even have a scratch on her skin. To be precise, it was the sacred mortal body that she had occupied. This sacred body was too hard. It could be said to be impervious to swords and spears. To kill him was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. However, Suyu had never intended to kill him. Suppress. He waved his hand and tossed the divine nine-dragon cauldron into the air. The divine cauldron rumbled and descended from the sky, suppressing the waning moon empress. Bang! However, the sacred body of a mortal fetus was too powerful. Without waiting for Suyu to start refining it, the waning moon empress sent the divine nine-dragon cauldron flying with a punch. "Humph! I can't subdue you." Suyu took out a middle-level time dominator treasure. This was a magic treasure used to trap enemies. Once it was activated, countless threads shot out from the magic treasure and wrapped around the waning moon empress. The characters of the heavenly books suppressed her, causing her power to be greatly reduced. There were silk threads wrapped around his body, completely binding his body. The waning moon queen's eyes were filled with hatred. "I'll kill you," Suyu said calmly. "It's a pity that you won't get what you want." The divine nine-dragon cauldron activated once more and sucked the waning moon empress into it. This time, the waning moon queen could no longer resist and could only be locked inside the divine nine-dragon cauldron. Suyu immediately sat down cross-legged on the ground and displayed the 8 great domains, refining it with the help of the divine nine-dragon cauldron. He could even refine the corpse of the stone-birthed son of heaven, let alone the waning moon empress who was hiding in the sacred mortal body. The refinement began. Beams of 9-colored light shot out of his sacred mortal body to resist the refinement of the divine nine-dragon cauldron. The waning moon empress screamed, "You can't do anything to me. The sacred mortal body is an invincible existence. You can't hurt me." Suyu remained unmoved. It was true that he could not harm this sacred mortal body. However, it was still possible to injure the waning moon empress. He activated the 8 domains with all his might. Half a day later, the waning moon empress finally felt a trace of heat. The lotus power of the divine nine-dragon cauldron forcibly penetrated the sacred mortal body and shot into her body. "Human, let me go, and I will give you everything you want. How about that?" The waning moon empress had an idea. "What's so good about that little girl? What she can give you, I can give you twice as much." Unfortunately, she did not know that everything the Star Rain Empress had was actually given by Suyu. He did not lack anything. He only lacked her life. "Don't waste your time. Hand over the son of heaven's blood, and it will make things easier for you," Suyu said calmly. How could the waning moon empress be willing to sit still and wait for death? She struggled frantically, but the suppression of the 2 dominator treasures made her helpless. Slowly, she felt the scorching heat, and then she let out a violent scream. Her body was constantly being refined by the divine nine-dragon cauldron. "Admit defeat. This is the end. It's better to die a quick death than to die so tragically," Suyu said. The waning moon empress clenched her teeth. "It's not over yet." With a flash of light, she bit the jade pendant on her neck. It was a time treasure given by the Time Master. Time travel. The jade pendant was activated, and an extremely astonishing power of time erupted from it. The power of time was exceptionally tyrannical, forcibly piercing through the divine nine-dragon cauldron and the 8 great realms. It swept away the sealed waning moon empress. Suyu frowned slightly, but it was not too surprising. The treasure given by the Time Master had never been used before. However, it would not be easy for the waning Moon Empress to escape. 9 dragons, soul-chasing. He clapped his palm, and the 8 dragons on the cauldron immediately flew out. 2 hours later, the waning Moon Empress, who had clearly been swept away, was carried back by the 8 dragons like a caterpillar. I don't want it. The 8 dragons threw her back into the divine 9-dragon cauldron and continued to refine her. This was also one of the magical uses of the divine 9-dragon cauldron. They chased after the escaped refinement. In despair, the waning Moon Empress was once again refined. Soon after, a burst of black smoke rose. 2 crystal balls fell from the body of the holy mortal fetus. One contained pure energy, which should be the energy of the waning Moon Empress after she was refined. The other was filled with extremely strong time domain power. Suyu picked it up and touched it with his fingers. As a result, an unexpected scene occurred. The crystallization of the time domain, like liquid, entered his body with a whoosh. Moreover, it merged with his own time domain, causing his domain to skyrocket, faintly showing signs of reaching a higher level. Suyu did not expect this. This was left for the Star Rain Empress. How could he absorb it? He tried to force this part of the domain out, but it had already been deeply integrated into his own domain and could not be separated. He was full of shame. How could he explain this to the Star Rain Empress? At that moment, the army led by the Star Rain Empress finally arrived. Suyu immediately cleaned up the traces on the ground. "Brother, where is the waning Moon Empress?" She ran up to Suyu and asked excitedly. Looking at her expectant eyes, how could Suyu have the nerve to say that he had absorbed it? She ran away. Suyu said guiltily. Empress Star Rain felt defeated. You can even escape like this? How great a price had they paid? So many Dominator treasures, so many dead and injured road masters, but in the end, all their efforts were in vain. Ahem, don't be discouraged. There are still other descendants of the Dominators. Let's continue in one go. With our remaining Dominator treasures, it should not be a problem to kill 1 or 2 more. Only then did the Star Rain Empress manage to pull herself together. I will listen to you, brother. After a pause, she said, Then, brother, who do you think should we attack now? Is it good? The Star Rain Empress was looking forward to it. In the southern part of the Dream-Broken Realm, the most powerful one was Xiaohao. Although his influence had been greatly reduced, he was still the most powerful existence. No, let's attack the other 2 realms. Suyu gave an unexpected response. Chapter 2690. Queen Star Rain blinked her eyes. What? Suyu raised his eyes and looked toward the north. His gaze was grave as he asked, Don't you find it strange that there isn't any news about Xiaohao? The 3 sides fought for more than half a month. How could Xiaohao remain calm? If Suyu was Xiaohao, he would have surely killed all 3 of them in one fell swoop when the battle was at its climax. But he didn't. It could be seen that this person's focus was not on the Broken Dream Realm, but on the other 2 realms. From the very beginning, Xiaohao had never planned to waste his energy in the south of the Broken Dream Realm. Instead, he intended to sweep through the other 2 worlds in a swift and fierce manner before returning to kill the Star Rain Empress and the others. That was why he gave the waning Moon Empress a ruler treasure. He wanted the chaos in the dream-shattered world to last longer, giving him more time. Understanding this, Empress Star Rain immediately became worried. Xiaohao controlled half of the sovereign's treasures. The hegemonic descendants of the other 2 worlds were no match for him. They were all killed like livestock. Once he obtained enough time bloodlines, who would be a match for him then? No one in the world could match him. There's no time to lose. Let's split up. You will head for the Netherworld realm, while I will head for the Heavenly Awakening realm, Suyu said. Queen Star Rain frowned. Is Big Brother alone? She couldn't help but worry. The struggle to become a hegemon was a battle of life and death. Any hegemon descendant would do everything in their power to struggle. They would even do a lot of crazy things. Just like the waning Moon Empress. Even the hundreds of trusted tunnel masters he had nurtured over the years were all sacrificed just like that, without even batting an eyelid. Suyu would inevitably be in danger if he was alone. I've made arrangements. You can go now. The Star Rain Empress pursed her red lips and looked deeply at Suyu. Brother, you must come back safely. Although the position of the master is important, you are also important. Her exquisite face turned slightly red as she lowered her head and led the army away. Suyu was slightly surprised. He had a feeling that the Empress Star Rain's words weren't just a message from a younger sister to an older brother. There was a deeper meaning behind it. He watched as the army left. Suyu stood on the spot and crushed a jade pendant. A powerful wave of information spread out. Dream-shattered realm in an uninhabited forest deep in the mountains. On a boulder, Yinran was frowning and deep in thought. I don't know how Senior is doing. Ever since they parted at the northern Ming city, she had been feeling uneasy. Xiao Hao invited the clone of Emperor Xiao Yao and the replica ruler. Its might was invincible. Although she had already escaped far away, she could still feel the terrifying power of the ruler. Could Senior really withstand such a powerful and invincible attack? 5 or 6 years had passed. She still hadn't received any message from her senior, so she had been waiting in this deep forest for many years. As she pondered, she suddenly raised her eyebrows and took out her communication jade pendant. Suyu's voice could be heard clearly. Gather here. The jade pendant contained a location message. Yinran was overjoyed and heaved a sigh of relief. Senior is safe and sound. A spatial ripple appeared in front of her, and she stepped into it. At that time, south of the Broken Dream realm, somewhere, an incomparably huge array was reflected in the sky. The formation contained the power of time and space. Dark clouds surged out of the formation. In the dark clouds, there were all hidden devils. The sect master, the young sect master, Xie Xiaoye, the 9 demon elders, and countless demon experts. They all came out in full force. The time master is finally here. The sect master heaved a long sigh. He had waited for this day for too long. As long as the time master was around, they could not show their faces. They could only hide in the dark world forever. Now, they could finally see the light of day again. Demon clansmen, follow me to pay your respects to the holy demon. The demon clan's sect master laughed and led the dark clouds away. At the border of Shiming City, Suyu sat cross-legged, silently waiting for Yanran. All of a sudden, he moved his brows slightly and released the charming queen of the 9 Nether. Compared to before, the charming queen of the 9 Nether had undergone a huge change. The pitch-black scales on her body revealed a faint golden hue. Cultivation has broken through, so you could no longer see through her. In the past, he could still vaguely feel her peerless pressure. But now, all he could feel was calm. It was like facing an unfathomable abyss. Thank you, Master. My cultivation has broken through to the middle stage of the Path Master level. The charming queen of the 9 Nether's face was filled with excitement and joy. She was originally at the peak of the early stage of the Path Master level. After 5 or 6 years of being baptized by the absolute beginning energy, her cultivation had finally broken through the shackles and reached the middle stage. There were only a few middle stage Path Masters in the entire Lingnan region. Someone like Fei Yunsheng, who was at the peak of the early stage, could look down on the entire Lingnan region. Suyu nodded. By the way, with your current cultivation, can you easily enter and exit the Netherworld realm? Of course. The charming queen of the 9 Nether said cheerfully. Master, please open the black feather gate. I will sneak in from the abyss. It was obvious that she was still a little afraid of the Phoenix King. After all, the other party had the advantage of numbers, and they could restrain her. If she was discovered, she would be a great threat, even with her cultivation as a middle-stage Pathmaster. Be careful. It immediately opened the black feather gate and let the charming queen of the 9 Nether in. The latter took a deep breath and returned to the Netherworld realm. Passing through the incomparably dark abyss, the charming queen of the 9 Nether cautiously came to the surface. Not far from the shore of the abyss, she saw the Netherworld puppet. It was different from the Netherworld puppet that had been torn to pieces that day. It had actually recovered. Moreover, the dark golden color of its body had changed, and it had turned into a bright golden puppet. This is the intermediate stage of the Netherworld puppet, the charming queen of the nine nether said in surprise. The Netherworld puppet was divided into 4 stages: lower stage, intermediate stage, advanced stage, and final evolution. She had expected that the puppet would recover, but she hadn't expected that it would break through and reach the intermediate stage. The so-called intermediate stage meant that the cultivation of the Netherworld puppet had reached the middle stage of the Pathmaster. Could it be that the evolution of the Netherworld puppet sped up because of the Netherworld realm? The charming queen of the nine nether said thoughtfully. Forget it. Let's take it away first. She stepped forward and grabbed the Netherworld puppet. But just as she was about to leave, a sharp cry came from beyond the clouds. I knew you would come back. The Phoenix King's angry voice arrived, and it quickly spiraled down. Behind it were thousands of little phoenixes. Damn it! The charming queen of the nine nether immediately jumped into the abyss with the puppet. But the Phoenix King pursued her, leading the many phoenixes into the abyss and launching continuous attacks. Although the charming queen of the nine nether had a higher cultivation level, she could only dodge left and right at this time. Even though she managed to reach the Black Feather Gate with great difficulty, the Phoenix King still ruthlessly pecked her. Chapter 2691. Gritting her teeth, the demonic queen fled into the Black Feather Gate and returned to the outside world. Just as she fell out, Suyu was alerted and immediately closed the Black Feather Gate. Boom! The Black Feather Gate trembled violently, and the giant gate was almost smashed open. Suyu's expression was grave. It had only been a few years, but the Phoenix King seemed to have become much stronger. Sit tight. Suyu immediately healed the demonic queen's injuries and healed the many cracks on her body. As the demonic queen was being healed, she put down the nine nether puppet and said, "Fortunately, I didn't fail you. I finally succeeded." Suyu glanced at the puppet and focused on healing the demonic queen. Compared to the puppet, the demonic queen was naturally more important. 2 days later, the demonic queen's injuries were completely healed. Only then did he have the heart to look at the nine nether puppet. Middle stage Pathmaster? Suyu couldn't help but be surprised. When he had abandoned it, it had only been at the Xian Pathmaster level. Now, 10 years had passed, and it had cultivated to such a terrifying level on its own. This is the power of the nine nether puppet. It can cultivate on its own. If you often put it in the nine nether world to cultivate, the effects will be even better. But thinking of the group of crazy Phoenix Kings in the nine nether world, the demonic queen clicked her tongue. If she put in again, the Phoenix Kings would not ignore the nine nether puppet. Suyu stroked the puppet, his heart filled with joy. He had gained another powerful fighter. Suddenly, Suyu sensed something and immediately waved his hand, putting the demonic queen and the nine nether puppet into the space storage device. Whoosh! A ripple of space flashed, and Yinran appeared. Looking at Suyu in front of her, her pretty face filled with surprise. "Greetings, Senior." Suyu chuckled. "I made you wait for so many years." As he spoke, he shot a crystal ball at her. "What is this?" Yinran grabbed it subconsciously, feeling that it was filled with pure energy. Suyu said, "Try it." Yinran tried to swallow it. As a result, her cultivation, which had been stagnant for so many years, began to skyrocket. In just a few hours, she had successfully broken through to the Nirvana Void Peak and was only one step away from becoming a Pathmaster. What powerful energy! Yinran was delighted. "Thank you, Senior." He gave her such a big gift as soon as he arrived. "Now that the fight for the Time Master has begun, I've decided to help Empress Star Reign," Suyu said straightforwardly. "Huh?" Yinran was surprised. Senior is willing to join the fight for the Time Ruler? But this is not the strangest. The strange thing was that he actually chose Queen Star Reign, the most useless one. "Yes, I want to see whether the rumors are true, and whether the rulers will be born again," Suyu said, pretending to be profound. However, the speaker did not mean it, but the listener did. Yinran nodded in agreement. "I've been thinking about this for years. Is it really possible to give birth to a sovereign?" Oh, even the descendants of the hegemons were deeply suspicious. It seemed that there was more to this so-called struggle for dominance than met the eye. "But why did you choose Empress Star Reign? She's the most useless one." Even choosing Emperor Mindful would be better than choosing her, Yinran muttered. Su Yu smiled faintly. Isn't it more challenging to choose the weakest one? Yinran tilted her head and thought about it. What kind of logic was this? However, Su Yu was their senior. All right, I'll go with you, Yinran said. Since there was nothing to do, she might as well witness the struggle for the Time Ruler. All right, come with me. He shook his sleeves and activated the power of time and space at the same time, sweeping the two of them into the heavenly, awakening realm. Yinran's pupils shrank. The power of space was nothing, but Su Yu's power of time was obviously much stronger. She was secretly in awe. It seemed that the senior was getting stronger every moment. It had only been 5 or 6 years since they last met, and his time domain seemed to have jumped to a higher level. Half a year later, on a piece of ruins, Su Yu and Yinran stood with their hands clasped behind their backs. Both of them looked extremely solemn. What entered their eyes was a dilapidated world. Everything had collapsed into ruins. Large areas of the 8-star civilization's defense formations were exposed, and there was a large area of damage. Yinran was shocked. Is this the central city where the second descendant of the hegemons is? Almost every place in the heavenly awakening realm was like this. It was in a state of destruction. It wasn't just the cities that were affected. Even the remote mountains and forests were destroyed and turned into scorched earth. Large areas of defense formations were severely damaged. In the southern part of the dream-broken realm, only the city where the waning moon empress was damaged, and it was far less serious than what they saw now. Su Yu stared deeply. In the end, even if someone becomes the hegemon, so what? The entire time domain is destroyed. What's the use? Yinran thought so. So, I am becoming more and more suspicious of the true purpose of the hegemon competition. Before the Time Ruler died, couldn't he just choose one person to be the hegemon's successor? Why did he have to resort to all-out war? There is an unexplainable conspiracy in it. Let's go to the last descendant of the hegemon and have a look, Su Yu said. The first 2 descendants of the hegemons in the heavenly awakening realm have been taken by Xiaohao. The situation of the last one was unknown. Half a month later, heavenly awakening realm, the central city of the great Wangtian Emperor. The surrounding area had been turned into scorched earth. The great Wangtian Emperor's hair was disheveled, and he bellowed at the sky. Who the hell are you? It was a group of mysterious people in fiery red robes who besieged the great Wangtian Emperor. There were only 7 of them, but when they joined forces, they had unimaginable destructive power. They could easily penetrate the void and shatter the defensive formation. The great Wangtian Emperor's magnificent army was slaughtered by the 7 mysterious people in fiery red robes. After half a year of war, he, the descendant of the Time Ruler, and a few of his trusted subordinates were the only ones left in the Wangtian Emperor. But it was only a matter of time. With the unparalleled strength of the 7 people, his death was only a matter of time. I can't accept this. The great Wangtian Emperor bellowed at the sky. He didn't even know who his enemies were, and he had been utterly defeated. Unfortunately, his shouting was useless. The 7 mysterious people in fiery red robes weaved hand signs again and performed a powerful secret technique. A fire lion that blotted out the sun and the sky pounced on them. With a furious roar, the entire Wangtian Emperor was completely destroyed. The few trusted subordinates around him were all incinerated by the raging fire. Only the great Wangtian Emperor was covered in blood, but he was still alive. On his neck, a treasure given by the Time Ruler shattered with a loud bang. Even his last treasure was lost. He had no power to resist anymore. Looking at the 7 mysterious people walking over in the raging fire, he smiled bitterly. A sad smile appeared on his face. In the end, I still lost. Take it. You have to accept your defeat. He opened his chest and presented his fatal weakness to his enemies. He had already accepted his fate. Chapter 2692. The great Emperor Wangtian's expression changed drastically as he said in horror, "A treasure of the heavenly law master level?" A green tornado swept across the sky with the force to engulf the world. The 7 mysterious men in fiery red robes turned around at the same time. Even though they were powerful, they had to be careful. They joined forces and performed the grand secret technique again. The tornado and the fire lion collided in the air, erupting with a destructive wave that shocked the heavens. The powerful shock wave pushed the 7 red-robed men back again and again. The great Emperor Wan Tian, who was far away, was affected and sent flying thousands of feet away. However, as he was flying backward, he was held back by a force of space. When he looked up, he found that it was a beautiful woman. Beside the woman was a young man who was so handsome that he didn't seem like a mortal. "You are—" The great Emperor Wan Tian was surprised. His territory had been destroyed, and the forces he belonged to had either been destroyed or fled. How could there be any loyal subordinates to save him? "Shut up and be quiet." Yanran stared ahead and did not look at the great Emperor Wan Tian. The great Emperor Wan Tian looked at Yanran blankly. Her cold and otherworldly attitude made it difficult for him to look at her. Suyu fixed his eyes on the 7 mysterious men and said calmly, "Get lost." The strength of these 7 people was too mysterious. When they joined forces, they were able to resist a low-level treasure of the Time Master. That was equivalent to an all-out attack by a master. The 7 of them naturally would not let it go. They joined forces again and performed the mysterious Fire Lion, ready to take back the great Emperor Wan Tian. Suyu turned his palm and took out a middle-level treasure of the Time Master. If it was activated, the 7 of them would not simply be blown away. They would be killed on the spot. Seeing this item, the 7 of them stepped back. Under the invisible red robes, they were all fearful. "Sir, I advise you not to meddle in other people's business," the leader of the 7 people warned. "You know nothing about who we are," Suyu said coldly. "I will say the same to you. You know nothing about who you are talking to." He still had many treasures of the Time Master. It would be easy for him to destroy the 7 of them. The 7 of them hesitated for a moment and finally retreated unwillingly. However, they did not go far. Instead, they waited far away and kept an eye on them. They were safe for now. "Thank you for saving my life." Great Emperor Gazing Sky bowed to the 2 of them. However, his gaze was mainly focused on Yanran. The way he looked at her was not as simple as gratitude. Yanran ignored him and looked at Suyu. She was wondering how she should deal with this descendant of the Time Master. Suyu sized up the great Emperor Wan Tian. His cultivation was only at the late stage of the Void Nirvana realm, and his time domain was only at the early stage. Even he couldn't defeat it. "I'll keep it with me for now." Having unintentionally absorbed the Waning Moon Queen's time domain, Suyu didn't dare to refine her time bloodline at will for the time being. If he were to absorb it again, he really wouldn't be able to explain it to that little girl. "How about the other 2 descendants of the Time Master?" Suyu asked. Although their central city had been destroyed, it was better to ask just in case. Only then did the great Emperor Wan Tian look at Suyu seriously. He looked at the middle-grade Time Dominator treasure in Suyu's hand with slight fear. His eyes were filled with deep fear. "The Supreme Sky Emperor has already died in battle," the Sky-Gazing Emperor said. Suyu was disappointed. He was still a step too late. However, the Mingjing Empress is still alive and has escaped to the 9 netherworld in the heavenly awakening realm. She has the power of the entire world to fight against the invading enemies. Hearing that, Suyu and Yanran's eyes lit up at the same time. They weren't too late. There was finally one more. "Where is that place?" Suyu asked. The Sky-Gazing Emperor looked at Suyu, then at Yanran, and said with a smile, "I can lead the way for the 2 of you. Anyway, I plan to rely on the Mingjing Empress." Suyu nodded. "Lead the way right away." He looked warily at the 7 mysterious people behind him, who were following him reluctantly. Under the leadership of the Sky-Gazing Emperor, they traversed millions of scorched lands and crossed shocking broken defensive formations. Finally, they came to a chaotic ruin. His eyes were vigilant as he said, "The entrance of the mine is in front of us." Suyu looked over and could clearly see the strong men of the 2 sides fighting at the entrance of the mine. The entrance was filled with an incomparably dense aura of the 9 nether. The people of the Mingjing Empress were using the perfect geographical advantage to block the invading armies from the outside world. The soldiers of the Great Army were all wearing fiery red robes. They were wearing the same clothes as the 7 people. It might be a little difficult to go in. Yinran closed her eyes and opened them slowly after a moment. Because of the great battle, the space in that area was very unstable. Moreover, there was an extremely powerful formation at the entrance, so they couldn't use the space domain to pass through. It's not difficult. The difficult thing is how to avoid being seen as an enemy by the Mingjing Empress after we go in, so you said lightly. They were going for the Mingjing Empress. How could the other party not see them as an enemy? Don't worry, the Mingjing Empress and I have an alliance. As long as I'm willing to come forward, all problems can be easily solved. An alliance? With the sky-gazing emperor's current situation, would the alliance still be binding? The Mingjing Empress would probably devour the sky-gazing emperor at the first moment. All right, Su Yu's eyes turned. Let's go in first. He summoned the little Kylin and briefly explained the problem with the formation at the entrance. The little Kylin patted its chest. Leave it to me. A cloud of purple mist appeared around its body and enveloped them all. In this way, no one would be able to detect their aura, and it could pass through the formation without a sound. The sky-gazing emperor looked at the little Kylin with surprise in his eyes. A Kylin that could conceal its aura and pass through any great formation at will? What kind of spiritual pet was this? He had never heard of it before. While he was surprised, the little Kylin had already led everyone through the battle area and successfully sneaked into the cave. The desolate netherworld realm entered everyone's sight. It was different from the netherworld world that Su Yu had obtained, which was full of netherworld crystals. This netherworld world was empty, with nothing left. Only a lot of the Mingjing Empress's army had retreated here. In a certain tent, a young woman with a pockmarked face was frowning. She was the Mingjing Empress. Her cultivation had reached the peak of the Earth Path Master, and there were 4 middle-stage Earth Path Masters guarding her. In the entire Heavenly Awakening realm, the Mingjing Empress's cultivation was the most powerful. Unfortunately, no matter how powerful she was, she had been driven here and was curled up in a corner. At this moment, he was checking all kinds of resources and manpower with an anxious look on his face. We can only hold on for 3 years at most, or even less. The Mingjing Empress's expression was calm. Their resources and manpower were constantly being consumed. On the contrary, the group of mysterious people outside was constantly expanding their manpower and resources. Chapter 2693. All of a sudden, Empress Mingjing raised her head and waved her hand at the corner of the tent. A wave of ripples flashed. Yinran took a few steps back, her face full of fear. Assassins. Kill them. Empress Mingjing reacted quickly. She stepped back quickly, allowing the 4 guards to take action. 4 middle-stage Pathmasters. One could imagine how powerful they were. Fortunately, Great Emperor Wang Tian spoke in time. Mingjing, it's me. Only then did Empress Mingjing notice that there were 2 men behind Yinran. One of them was Great Emperor Wang Tian. Brother Wang Tian? Empress Mingjing was pleasantly surprised. Stop. The 4 middle-stage Pathmasters stopped immediately. She stepped forward and held Great Emperor Wang Tian's hand. Brother, I was so worried about you. I thought something bad had happened to you. The 2 of them were not allies. Instead, they were very close relatives. This was extremely rare among the descendants of the Time Master. The rest of the descendants of the Time Master all regarded each other as enemies. How could they be compared to the deep affection of the 2 people in front of her? Great Emperor Wang Tian said in shame, I was useless. I couldn't resist the enemy and ended up alone. Thanks to Miss Yinran's help, I was able to come here successfully. Hearing this, Yinran frowned. She had attacked him, protected him all the way, and escorted him here. It was all Su Yu's credit. She was just following Su Yu's instructions. Why did Great Emperor Wang Tian ignore Su Yu and put all the credit on her? It was hard to understand. Empress Mingjing immediately cupped her fists at Yinran and said gratefully, Thank you for saving my life. As she spoke, she looked at Su Yu, who was beside Yinran. This is, she asked Great Emperor Wang Tian. Great Emperor Wang Tian said casually, He is also the one who saved me. The word also seriously weakened Suyu's role. However, it wasn't completely useless. It was hard to tell what was wrong. Oh, I see. Empress Ming Jing nodded, mistakenly thinking that Su Yu was just Yinran's attendant. Empress Ming Jing said enthusiastically, now that the outside world is in a fierce battle, it's not easy to leave. Why don't you rest here for now and find a way to leave when the battle subsides? Su Yu nodded. Of course, there's no problem. The sky-gazing monarch let out a long sigh of relief, feeling extremely relaxed. Lady Yinran, thank you for taking care of me along the way. Why don't I give you face and treat you to a meal alone? Heavenly Emperor Gazing Sky was only grateful to Yinran, or perhaps he was extremely interested. Yinran said bluntly, sorry, I want to rest. The Heavenly Gazing Emperor was disappointed and said, all right, I will thank Lady Yinran when I have the time. Under Empress Mingjing's arrangement, Su Yu and Yinran were taken away to rest. Their guest rooms were not far from each other. Not long after the arrangements were made, Yinran came to Su Yu's guest room. Senior, what should we do next? The number of experts by Empress Mingjing's side is beyond our expectations. Yinran could not help but feel apprehensive. It wasn't just Empress Mingjing's cultivation. The guard around him were all extraordinarily powerful. It would be extremely difficult to make a move against him. Let's just wait and see, Su Yu said. Yinran nodded. After a moment of hesitation, she said, Senior, Heavenly Emperor Gazing Sky doesn't seem to harbor any ill intentions towards me. She wasn't stupid. How could she not sense that the Heavenly Emperor Gazing Sky's attitude towards her was very unusual? Su Yu laughed involuntarily. You probably won his heart by saving the damsel in distress. Yinran blushed and said, you're so annoying. How dare you make fun of me, Senior? Inform me if you have any instructions for me. I will return to my room first. Yinran left in a hurry. Her face was slightly flushed. Unbeknownst to her, in a certain room, a crystal ball was placed in front of the Heavenly Emperor. The scene from earlier was reflected in it. The blushing expression on Yinran's face was clearly visible. A hint of jealousy appeared on his face. Is this what you meant by wanting to rest? She would rather stay in a room with Su Yu and do something shameful than have dinner with him alone? Right at that moment, Empress Ming Jing walked in. Brother Wang Tian, I have something to discuss with you. The Heavenly Emperor put away the crystal ball immediately and smiled. What is it, Ming Jing? Empress Ming Jing frowned and said, my people and resources can't be wasted forever. Sooner or later, they will be depleted. We need to plan ahead. The Heavenly Emperor nodded. I understand that. Staying here was only a temporary measure. Empress Ming Jing hesitated. May I ask, Brother Wang Tian, how did you pass through the many battlefields and come to this place? She hoped to leave the cave quietly with the help of the method they used to enter. The Heavenly Emperor was very calm. He said, it was the man named Su Yu. He is a strange spiritual pet that can conceal a person's scent and pass through the seal. Is it that magical? Empress Ming Jing said, in surprise. She hesitated for a moment and said, then, I will discuss it with him and see if he can take us away quietly in the near future. Unexpectedly, the Heavenly Emperor rolled his eyes. Why go through so much trouble? Can't we just take that spiritual pet? The Heavenly Emperor said in a matter-of-fact manner. Empress Ming Jing shook her head and said, we can't do that. That Su Yu is one of your saviors, isn't he? Isn't it ungrateful to take someone else's belongings before repaying him? There was a reason why Empress Ming Jing could gather a group of strong men around her. Her broad-mindedness was the reason why those strong men were loyal to her. The Heavenly Emperor said disapprovingly, what kind of savior is he? Without him, I could have escaped, but it would have been slightly more difficult. What he said was true. It was as if it was someone else who was filled with despair when the city fell. Now, she was denying all of Su Yu's credit. It was ridiculous and hateful. Is that so? Empress Ming Jing didn't understand the situation at the time and didn't quite understand. However, she still shook her head firmly. We're in a difficult situation now and need help. We can't take someone else's treasures and make an enemy out of them. You don't have to worry about this. I will discuss it with that human. At most, we will give him more rewards. We are far from taking his belongings. The Heavenly Emperor looked at the back of Empress Ming Jing as she left and sighed. Sigh, how soft-hearted. When it is time to fight for the position of the master, one should be decisive, the Heavenly Emperor said calmly. Since you don't want to be the bad guy, let me be the bad guy. The next day, the Heavenly Emperor came to invite Yinran and Su Yu to attend the welcoming banquet with great enthusiasm. Brother Su, thanks to you for taking care of me along the way, I was able to arrive here safely. I will pay my respects to you later. Please don't refuse my kindness. Compared to the day before, his attitude had undergone a 180-degree change. Who was Su Yu? One could tell from a leaf that autumn was coming. He immediately concluded that Su Yu had ulterior motives. He secretly gave Yinren a look, and she understood tacitly. Chapter 2694. The banquet was hosted by Queen Ming Jing. Although the situation of the war was dire, it was still enough to provide some resources to entertain Su Yu and the others. She toasted Yinran and Su Yu passionately and passionately. You two, I'm deeply grateful that Brother Wang Tian was able to return safely, Queen Ming Jing said gratefully. Su Yu said, You are welcome. He drank the wine in front of him in one gulp. The wine was arranged by Queen Ming Jing, so it was safe to drink. However, Great Emperor Wang Tian's intentions were not reassuring. After hesitating for a moment, Queen Ming Jing said, I have a presumptuous request that I would like to discuss with you two. Go ahead, Su Yu said. Queen Ming Jing smiled bitterly. As you can see, I'm just trying to survive by hiding here. Sooner or later, I will run out of food and ammunition. So, I hope to leave this place quietly with your help. I don't know if it's possible. Leave with their help? So you thought about it. This was a good opportunity to capture Queen Ming Jing alive. Although I am in dire straits, I still have some things that I can give to you. If you succeed, I will give you all the resources I have, Queen Ming Jing said. She was exceptionally generous. Su Yu was slightly surprised. She could sense that Empress Ming Jing was speaking the truth and was not being perfunctory. This descendant of the Time Master was indeed a little different from other descendants. Well, when do you plan to leave? Su Yu asked. Queen Ming Jing said thoughtfully, 10 days later. I will try my best to take away the soldiers who have followed me for many years. A small number of them would be left behind to continue fighting the enemy at the entrance of the cave, pretending that the queen was still inside. The rest would not have to be sacrificed. This was the polar opposite of the Waning Moon Queen, who had sacrificed nearly 1,000 of her Path Masters. Su Yu's impression of this descendant of the Time Master had changed quite a bit. All right, within 10 days, you should prepare yourself, Su Yu promised. At that moment, Great Emperor Wang Tian said, Su Yu, can you release your spiritual pet for everyone to see? Queen Mingjing's face was filled with curiosity. She also wanted to know what kind of spiritual pet possessed such great power. Su Yu thought about it and did not refuse. It was not a bad thing to just take a look. With a wave of his palm, the little Qilin was released. It lazily lay on the ground, occasionally releasing the power of primal chaos. Power of chaos. Empress Mingjing was shocked. It is indeed a divine beast with extraordinary talent. As far as she knew, the power of chaos only appeared in an extremely small number of living creatures. It was no wonder that this beast could lead them across the battlefield and disregard the seal to reach this place. With it around, I can finally be at ease, Empress Ming Jing said slowly. Su Yu wore a smile as he stored the small Qilin in his spatial storage tool. Meanwhile, the sky-gazing martial monarch suddenly spoke. Can I have another look? I feel that this little Qilin seems familiar. Déjà vu. Little Qilin should be unique in this world. Staring at the great Emperor Wang Tian, Su Yu became vigilant and said, The little Qilin is afraid of strangers and doesn't like to be disturbed. As he spoke, he put the spatial storage device into his pocket. The sky-gazing heavenly monarch said with displeasure, We are now in the same boat. What do you mean by this? Grasshopper? Su Yu smiled without saying a word. He and Yinran were not trapped. They could leave at any time. However, it was difficult for the great Emperor Wang Tian to leave. What was with this attitude? Empress Mingjing tugged at him immediately and said, "Brother Wan Tian, don't talk nonsense." How could he say something that would offend someone? The great Emperor Wan Tian shook off her hand and stared straight at Su Yu. With a gloomy face, he said, "Now, I have reason to suspect that you are up to no good. Others might have the right to say that, but he didn't. If Su Yu was up to no good, he would have been decapitated." "Brother Wan Tian, what are you talking about?" Empress Mingjing was really anxious. She couldn't understand the great Emperor Wan Tian. The latter turned a deaf ear to her and continued to stare at Su Yu. "I'll give you two choices. First, hand over the small Kylan to me temporarily to prove that you have no ulterior motives. Second, I'll take coercive measures against you." The atmosphere suddenly became tense. Moreover, it was the great Emperor Wan Tian who was acting recklessly. Empress Mingjing was very clear when it came to matters of right and wrong. She raised her eyebrows and glared at the great Emperor Wan Tian. "Shut up. Don't you maliciously hurt people again." Su Yu and Yanran weren't their servants who could leave and stay as they pleased. How could they have any ulterior motives? The great Emperor Wan Tian acted as if they owed him something, which was really inappropriate. Unexpectedly, the great Emperor Wan Tian looked at her and said disappointedly, "Mingjing, you are not suitable to lead. Leave the rest to me. You could just watch from the side." What did he mean? Empress Mingjing was stunned. Then, she realized something and said, "For guards, come here." However, the 4 personal guards who used to be on call didn't listen to her at all. Have they betrayed me? Empress Mingjing's heart sank. What did they betray me? Who instigated them? At that moment, the great Emperor Wan Tian chuckled. "For guards, come here." Swish! For shadows flashed and appeared behind the great Emperor Wan Tian, standing neatly and respectfully. They didn't listen to Empress Mingjing's summons, but listened to the orders of the great Emperor Wan Tian, an outsider. "Did you betray me?" Empress Mingjing said in disbelief. To be exact, the great emperor had also betrayed her. He had instigated discord among her people and made them his confidants. The great Emperor Wan Tian smiled lightly. "Don't make it sound so bad. I am only leading them on your behalf. When this is over, I will return them to you." Empress Mingjing was so angry that her chest was heaving up and down. She stared at the 4 guards and asked, "Why did you betray me?" The 4 guards sighed. "The great Emperor Wan Tian is right. If we follow you, we will only gradually exhaust ourselves and die a horrible death. We need to take the initiative to attack and seize any chance of survival." Many days of despair had made them more eager to survive. Therefore, under the incessant instigation of the great emperor, their loyalty finally wavered, and they completely sided with the great Emperor Wan Tian. The 4 of them decided to switch allegiance to the great Emperor Wan Tian. They would listen to his commands, seize the little Kylan, and take control of the situation. The great emperor raised his cup and drank it in one gulp. With a cold look in his eyes, he said, "Take Su Yu down." Empress Mingjing stood in front of him and shouted, "Who dares?" She looked at the great Emperor Wan Tian with her beautiful eyes and tried to persuade him one last time. "Brother Wan Tian, people can't be ungrateful. Without him, you have been dead a long time ago. How can you treat others like this?" However, the great Emperor Wan Tian was more confident than anyone else. "I, the great Emperor Wan Tian, have many tricks up my sleeve. I don't need a little human to save me. Without him, I can still escape." The great Emperor Wan Tian said stiffly. His eyes turned cold. "Empress Mingjing, step aside, or I will capture you as well." Chapter 2695. Empress Mingjing stared at the great emperor, her eyes full of disappointment. In her memory, the great emperor was resourceful and cared for her. Now that she had encountered such a disaster, she finally saw him clearly. Ungrateful and ungrateful. Not only had he betrayed his savior, but he had also betrayed his sister. She had taken him out of kindness, but what had happened to him? He had instigated her own people to betray her. "Brother Wan Tian, don't make any more mistakes. If you turn back now, I will still recognize you as my brother." Empress Mingjing looked disappointed. However, since when did the stubborn, sky-gazing emperor ever have true family love? In his eyes, Empress Mingjing was just a tool that could be used slightly. Come on, take down Empress Mingjing. Great Emperor Wang Tian said coldly. Empress Mingjing took out a defensive treasure given to her by the Time Master and said angrily, "Who dares?" The four guardians did not dare to act rashly. Once that treasure was activated, it would kill. Great Emperor Wang Tian had a slight headache. There were two reasons why he was afraid of Empress Mingjing. One was because she was an expert. The other was because she had yet to use the treasure of the Time Master. Mingjing, don't mess around. You and I are family. Great Emperor Wang Tian immediately changed his expression to that of family love. It was as if the person who wanted to capture Empress Mingjing was someone else. Empress Mingjing said coldly, "Get out of my way." Great Emperor Wang Tian shouted, "What do you want?" There was a hint of anxiety on his face because he had already vaguely realized what Empress Mirror was planning. As expected, Empress Mingjing said, "Can you take me away from this place?" Anyway, his people had been secretly taken over by Great Emperor Wang Tian. Why should she stay? Suyu said calmly, "Sure." Hearing this, the sky-gazing emperor's face was filled with anxiety. "Mingjing, are you trying to get me killed?" Great Emperor Wang Tian scolded. Empress Mingjing was utterly disappointed. Wasn't stealing her military power the same as getting her killed? Now, he was reprimanding her for going too far like a victim. In her heart, she no longer had any expectations for this brother of hers. The cruel reality had exposed her true nature. "Let's go," the Mirror Empress said. Suyu looked at Empress Mingjing with a complicated expression, nodded, and said, "All right, little Kylan, come out." Whoosh! The small Kylan drilled out of its storage space and released a wave of energy that engulfed Suyu and the others. The sky-gazing emperor could do nothing but watch them leave. He was filled with regret and hatred. Only now did he realize that he had neglected the essentials. So what if they took away Empress Mirror's military power? Wouldn't they still have to hole up here and be slowly nibbled away by the enemy? He shouldn't have treated Suyu so harshly from the beginning. But regret was useless. However, right at that moment, an incomparably astonishing ripple suddenly came from the heavily guarded cave entrance. A destructive force erupted from within, killing all the experts guarding the cave entrance. At the same time, countless enemies poured into the netherworld realm from the outside world and started a massacre. It was the 7 unparalleled strong men in fiery red robes. They had tracked Suyu and the others to this place and launched an attack to break through the cave's defenses. The sky-gazing emperor's expression changed drastically. Xiaochen watched as the 7 fiery red-robed figures slowly descended from the cave entrance. The wine cup in his hand fell to the ground with a pa sound. His face was pale and full of despair. The fear of being dominated by the 7 horrifying existences welled up in his heart again. "Don't leave me behind. Save me." The sky-gazing emperor screamed in desperation. How could he still have his arrogant confidence at this moment? All he had was fear. Suyu and the others who hadn't gone far stopped in their tracks. Empress Mirror looked at the desperate sky-gazing emperor and couldn't bear to see him die. She said in a low voice, "Although he is worse than a beast, can you give him a chance?" Suyu thought for a moment and nodded slightly. He had no intention of letting the sky-gazing emperor go. He planned to come back and take the sky-gazing emperor's life after stabilizing Empress Mirror. But unexpectedly, the arrival of the 7 mysterious men in fiery red robes disrupted his plan. He could only bring the sky-gazing emperor along with them. When the group returned, the small Kylan slapped its claws on the sky-gazing emperor's face. "Damn it, you useless thing, come here." When the sky-gazing emperor realized that they had returned, he was pleasantly surprised again. He bent his body and made his way in. The 4 mid-stage Dao Lord powerhouses also followed him in with tense expressions. Right at that moment, the enemies attacked the pavilion. However, the small Kylan had already led them to the entrance. As long as they made their way through, they would reach the outside world. However, the 7 mysterious men in fiery red robes seemed to have sensed something. They conjured their spells and launched attacks at the entrance. A loud rumble was heard. A fiery red lion appeared and attacked the cave in a frenzy. Su Yu and the others had no choice but to retreat. The powerful aftershocks of the attacks broke the aura of the small Kylan and exposed the group. Empress Mirror's heart skipped a beat. However, when her attention was focused on the enemies, she felt a sharp pain in her palm. When she looked down, she saw that the sky-gazing Emperor had taken advantage of her distraction to cut off her palm and snatch the Time Master's magical treasure from her palm. Hiss! Empress Mirror immediately reassembled her palm and stared at the sky-gazing Emperor angrily. The sky-gazing Emperor held the Time Master's magical treasure in his hand and sneered. "It's best if I control the Time Master's magical treasure. You are too selfish and don't know how to look at the big picture." At that moment, he controlled the Time Master's magical treasure. He also controlled 4 strong men in the middle stage of the Pathmaster. It was entirely possible for him to rush out of the Netherworld realm. "Miss Yanran." The sky-gazing Emperor looked at Yanran and said, "A nobody like Su Yu is not a good match. If you follow me, your future will be bright." Before he could finish, Yanran sneered coldly. "Follow a despicable person like you?" At that moment, the sky-gazing Emperor actually felt good about himself. He was already in such a miserable state, yet he still refused to let go of his identity as the descendant of the Time Master. What was even more ridiculous was that he still wanted to compare himself to Su Yu. To be honest, could he even compare himself to Su Yu? The sky-gazing Emperor's expression froze. He shook his head and sighed. "Sigh, you are a beauty, but why are you so blind? You don't want me, who has the potential to become the Space Master, but you choose a useless human. Forget it. A woman like you is not worthy of my attention. Take care of yourself." The sky-gazing Emperor rose into the sky under the protection of the 4 middle-stage Pathmasters. So you did not stop him. Since the 7 mysterious men in fiery red robes had attacked, they would not give the people inside a chance to leave easily. As expected, the sky-gazing Emperor had just rushed to the entrance of the cave when a secret technique that had been left behind in advance descended. A fire lion descended with a roar. The sky-gazing Emperor was startled and hurriedly activated the only remaining Time Master's magical treasure. One was a Heavenly Law Master's attack, while the other was a Heavenly Law Master's defense. Chapter 2696. The 4 mid-stage Tao Lords bore the brunt of the shockwave and were crushed on the spot. As for the sky-gazing Emperor, he was not any better. His entire body was torn apart by the explosion, and blood spurted out of his mouth as he was sent flying back. His body landed heavily at Empress Mingjing's feet. Not even in his wildest dreams would the Heavenly Emperor have expected that not only would he fail to leave the Netherworld realm, but he would also be seriously injured and on the verge of death. "Mingjing, save me." Heavenly Monarch used the same trick again. However, before he could finish speaking, Empress Mingjing slammed her palm into his chest. Then, with a vicious twist, he crushed the heart. The sky-gazing great monarch widened his eyes in indignation as his life drained away bit by bit. Finally, it disappeared as he died. A wisp of time domain left the body of the sky-gazing Emperor. He fused into Empress Mirror's body. Upon seeing this, Su Yu finally understood why the crystal ball of the time domain had been absorbed by him. This was because whoever killed a descendant of the Time Sovereign would be able to absorb the descendant's time domain. As long as this person was a time domainer, after obtaining Great Tharch Wangtian's time domain, the Mirror Empress's domain level immediately approached the advanced level. "I'm sorry. I was blind and almost got you guys into trouble," Empress Mingjing said dejectedly. She had never thought that she would be the one to obtain the bloodline power of the sky-gazing martial monarch. "It doesn't matter, as I expected it." Su Yu patted the small Kylan's head and said, "Let's go." With great monarch Wang Tian leading the way, it was much easier for them to leave after activating the secret technique at the cave entrance. The small Qilin nodded and immediately used a secret technique to conceal them, smoothly leaving the Netherworld realm. They calmly passed through the battlefield and landed at the border of the Heavenly Awakening realm and the Nether realm. Everyone stood on the ruins, but the atmosphere between them was a little strange. In the end, Suyu asked the small Kylan to stop. Empress Mirror immediately took a few steps back, maintaining her distance. He was already on guard. Back in the Netherworld realm, they still had a good relationship. But that might not be the case after coming out. I'm very grateful for your kindness in saving my life. However, I have nothing, so I'm unable to repay all of you at the moment. If I have the chance to become the Master of Time, I will definitely repay all of you. Empress Ming Jing slowly retreated. Yinran's heart tightened. They had gone through a lot of trouble to bring Empress Ming Jing out. How could he let her go just like that? However, Suyu said, perhaps if you stay by my side, you won't be able to escape death in the end. But if you leave me, you will die even earlier. Empress Mirror did not think much of it. Although I'm not talented, I'm not as useless as the sky-gazing emperor. I'm confident that I can survive on my own. Ran sneered. With a flip of her palm, she took out a treasure of the ruler of time. Shockingly, it was an advanced rank. Take a guess. How many times can this kill you? Ran said disdainfully. If Senior wanted to kill you, would you still be alive? Seeing this item, Empress Mirror sucked in a breath of cold air. Didn't they say that Xiaohao got all the Time Sovereign's treasures? Despite her surprise, Empress Mirror did understand. With this object, if Suyu really wanted to take his life, he would have already taken it from the Netherworld realm. Even if she had thousands of soldiers and horses by her side, she would not be able to escape death. She could live until now because Suyu had no intention of killing her. Although I serve a descendant of the Time Sovereign, we all agree that the Time Sovereign's competition has ulterior motives, Suyu said calmly. So, until the last moment, I don't want to kill a Time Sovereign, especially since you are a good person. At least she knew how to be grateful. It would be a pity to kill such a person just like that. It was better to wait until the last moment to make a decision. If killing could be avoided and a Time Sovereign was chosen, why would they fight each other? Empress Mirror thought for a short while, then nodded and agreed. Please forgive me if I offended you just now. Staying in front of this senior and relying on the powerful Time Sovereign's treasures, she could survive until the end. As for whether she would live or die in the end, it was up to fate. Very well. Now follow me to the Netherworld realm. The descendant of the Time Sovereign that I serve should have finished his battle. Empress Star Rain had so many Time Sovereign's treasures, so she should be able to snatch a descendant of the Time Sovereign. The entire Time Domain's Time Sovereign's competition was almost over. Next, it was time for the final battle. The group headed for the Netherworld realm. Shockingly, the Netherworld realm was even more ruined than the Heavenly Awakening realm. The whole world was almost destroyed and fragmented. As far as the eye could see, not even scorched earth was left. Only the boundless defensive formations were damaged and full of cracks. The Netherworld realm is completely finished. Empress Mirror sighed. Even if a new ruler is born, the Netherworld realm can never recover. What is the meaning of the competition for the Time Sovereign? Empress Mirror sighed. Soon, Suyu and the others rushed to the northern part of the Netherworld realm. In the void, on a floating island, Suyu met up with the army led by Empress Star Rain and Great Emperor Mingxin. Nearly half of their troops had been lost. Brother, Empress Star Rain rushed over in surprise, then pouted. My Time Sovereign's treasures are all used up. Suyu took out the extra ones and handed them to her. I still have a lot left. Use them without worry. After he had used up his treasures, there was still Yenron's. The Time Sovereign's treasures that the two of them controlled accounted for more than half of all the treasures. Empress Star Rain smiled slightly and said proudly, Brother, I caught Great Emperor Ziqiong. She waved her hand, and a group of people came over with Great Emperor Ziqiong, who was tied up. You didn't kill him? Suyu was surprised. Empress Star Rain was confused. I think the competition for the Time Sovereign is very strange and suspicious, so I let him live for now. It won't be too late to kill him later. Even the simple-minded Empress Star Rain felt that something was wrong. This time, the competition for the Time Sovereign was really problematic. In this way, the overall competition for the Time Sovereign had temporarily come to an end. The other descendants of the Time Sovereigns had been killed, leaving only Empress Star Rain, Great Emperor Mingxin, Great Emperor Mingjin, Great Emperor Ziqiong, and Xiaohao. The new descendants of the Time Sovereign would be born from them. Right at this moment, a long laugh that shocked the netherworld realm ran through the sky and earth. Since we're both here, let's have a showdown and decide who's the stronger one. That arrogant and condescending voice, who else could it be other than Xiao. Boom, boom. In the distant sky, a blood cloud rumbled. A moment ago, it was still very far away, but in the blink of an eye, it suddenly appeared in front of them. It was the time domain, a high-level time domain, which was very close to the Yuan level. Xiao sat on a golden throne in the middle of the blood clouds. He looked like a Brahma god, looking down on them. Very good. I thought Star Rain and Mingxin were in the bag, but I didn't expect you to hide so deeply. You came to the heavenly awakening realm and the netherworld realm to ruin my plans. Chapter 2697. In his plan, he would first subdue the heavenly awakening realm and the nether realm. Then, he would reap the benefits and defeat the entire dream-divided realm. In this way, he could achieve the position of the supreme ruler. Everything had been going smoothly. All the descendants of the Time Masters had been captured. Unexpectedly, Empress Star Rain and Great Emperor Mingxin had appeared out of nowhere. The former had snatched Great Emperor Ziqiao. Su Yu had snatched two descendants of the Time Master, completely destroying his plan. He was forced to show up in advance and fight with them. Empress Mingjing shouted in a low voice, "Xiao, please calm down." She pointed to the destruction around them and the broken defensive formation. Look at the time realm now. Don't you think it's strange? All the participants had sensed that something was wrong. Even if you become the Time Master, what is the point of obtaining such a time realm? She asked. But Xiao only responded with a sneer. I'm not blind. Why can't I understand? Xiao was very calm. He was unexpectedly calm. In fact, I know more than you do. Xiao looked at them with pity in his eyes. So, I must become a Time Master. Behind him, countless strong men appeared. The 7 mysterious men in fiery red robes were among them. In addition, there were 7 other mysterious men in black robes. These 14 people stood respectfully behind Great Emperor Xiao. Emperor Star Rain stared at the mysterious men in black robes and said solemnly, "Brother, be careful. Those 7 mysterious men in black robes are very powerful." Even without her warning, Su Yu knew. But where did they come from? Where did Xiao recruit such powerful men? The 7 of them could resist the attack of the Heaven Law Master. The strength of the 7 of them must have reached the peak of the Roadmaster level. In the time realm, there shouldn't be anyone so powerful. Xiao grinned. Do you want to die a quick death or a painful death? If you want to die a quick death, surrender. If you want to suffer, you can continue to resist. Hearing this, everyone on Su Yu's side was on guard. Su Yu made the first move and gave Yinren a look. Without hesitation, the latter took out a middle-level Time Master treasure. She activated it immediately. Immediately, 100 pitch-black arrows of light pierced through the void and bombarded them. Xiao glared at Yinren and scolded, "You traitor!" With a wave of his hand, he also took out a mid-grade defensive magic treasure. A golden rooster suddenly appeared and crowed on the spot. All the roosters lost their effect. Then, the 14 mysterious people behind him attacked at the same time. The 7 mysterious men in fiery red robes were still using the fiery red lion. The 7 mysterious black-robed men unleashed a pitch-black python. The 2 of them whistled over, carrying with them an unrivaled might as they crushed everyone. Su Yu and Yinren each took out a low-grade Time Master's magical treasure and crushed it. Water and fire intertwined to form a tornado, sweeping forward crazily. Both sides immediately collided with each other, and the world-destroying shockwaves that shot out caused the already fragmented defensive formation to become even more fragmented. However, this was only the beginning. Xiao snorted coldly and casually threw out a Time Master's magical treasure. Then let's see who will have the last laugh. The Mingjing Empress shouted in a low voice, "Xiao, since you were so stubborn, don't blame me for helping them." She activated the Time Domain bloodline and activated the Time Freeze domain, freezing the opponent's attack and even the 14 people. The Star Rain Empress, The mindful Great Emperor and the Great Emperor Ziqiong also activated the Time Domain bloodline. This was, after all, a battle between the descendants of the Time Master. The battle between them was unavoidable. Good. I'll show you what a genius is and what a fool is. Xiaohao laughed, slapped the throne, and jumped up. Time freeze domain. 3 solid hourglasses of time appeared above his head. The fourth one was particularly blurry. If even the fourth one was solid, then Xiaohao would reach the Yuan level and become the supreme Time Master. On the other hand, the Star Rain Empress and the other 3 people, except for the Mingjing Empress, who had fused with the Sky Gazer and was close to a high-level domain, the other domains were generally only at the primary and middle level. The 4 of them combined their domains, but they were still no match for Xiaohao. Xiaohao's time freeze was enough to shatter everyone's time domain. The Fire Lion and the Venomous Python were freed. Instead, it was their side that had fallen into a process of time slowing down. The Fire and Water Tornado was immediately crushed by the Fire Lion and the Venomous Python, and it pounced toward the 2 of them. At this critical moment, the 1,000 Earth Path Masters behind them all launched their domain attacks. One person's domain attack was not scary. 10 people's domain did not fear it. 100 people might be able to block it. What about 1,000 people? The domain of 1,000 Earth Path Masters merged to form a vast world that pressed forward. The Fire Lion and the Venomous Python were powerful, but they were forced back by the 1,000 Earth Path Masters' domain. In the end, it shattered with a loud boom. The 14 experts all grunted and spat out a mouthful of blood. Xiaohao narrowed his eyes. You're courting death. Time stripping. Time flowed in Xiaohao's eyes. He swept his gaze over the 1,000 Earth Path Masters. Their merged domains were weakened and shattered by the time stripping. Why is my domain gone? Why can't I release it? The 1,000 Earth Path Masters were shocked. They even discovered that their bodies were rapidly aging at a speed visible to the naked eye. That was the power of time stripping. It could forcibly take away their lives. Time reversal. Seeing this, the Emperor Star Rain and the others immediately launched their attacks. Thus, the Earth Path Master's loss of vitality was alleviated. Both sides fell into a delicate balance. For a moment, no one could do anything to the other. Suyu seized the opportunity and took out 2 palm-sized doors at the same time. One was black and the other was white. With a toss of his palm, the 2 descended from the sky, one in front and one behind, trapping Xiaohao and the 14 mysterious experts in the center. Then, the 2 giant doors opened at the same time. From within the door of white feather, a sharp cry could be heard. A huge phoenix that blotted out the sky led a horde of golden phoenixes as it charged out. Xiaohao and the 14 mysterious experts were the first to be hit. Xiaohao's expression changed drastically. Door of white feather. Wasn't the door of white feather that he had sealed in the blood sea stolen? He glared at the man in the bamboo hat beside the Empress Star Rain. So it was him. However, the door had appeared so suddenly that he had no time to think. Chapter 2698. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a destructive wave of time exploded. That was Suyu activating the highest level time master magical treasure he had. At this critical moment, he launched an attack on Xiaohao. Xiaohao was caught off guard and could only resist with the Time Master magical treasure. In this way, he lost the best opportunity to freeze the phoenixes. The latter roared and rushed him and the 14 mysterious people into the Black Feather Gate. Suyu's eyes flashed. He was about to close the 2 gates and imprison them in the Netherworld realm forever. However, at this moment, the 14 mysterious people joined forces to perform a secret technique and forcibly held the Black Feather Gate. Xiaohao, you go first. Seizing the fleeting opportunity, Xiaohao returned first. Suyu clenched his 5 fingers and immediately held the Black Feather Gate completely. Before Xiaohao could react, he immediately called back the Black Feather Gate. Suyu and the others had no time to pay attention to the phoenixes who were fleeing in all directions. They surrounded Xiaohao. Only Xiaohao was left. It would no longer be difficult to deal with them. However, There was only a flicker of ferocity on Xiao Hao's face, without the slightest hint of fear. With a pull of his palm, he tore off the cloak behind him, revealing his strong body and the ruler magical treasures hanging all over him. Okay, I will fight all of you alone. Xiao Hao threw a time master magical treasure backhandedly. Suyu was not afraid and threw it back. Yinran also joined in. Xiao Hao threw another magical treasure into it, and the process kept repeating. The Star Rain Empress and the others watched the destructive Heaven Law Master level ruler magical treasures explode one after another, and they could only retreat with their scalps numb. This was not a battle they were qualified to participate in. The Time Master magical treasures of both sides were consumed at an alarming rate. In the end, they were all exhausted. However, no one could do anything to the other. The defensive formation was rumbling. It was the sound of being overwhelmed. Xiao Hao had used up all the Time Master magical treasures, but he still had no fear on his face. Now that you have used up all your Time Master magical treasures, you have nothing left to resist me, right? Xiao Hao sneered. It turned out that he had never used the Time Master magical treasure as a trump card. His trump card was something else. He slowly took out a withered wooden scepter. As soon as the scepter was taken out, the whole world seemed to quiet down. The eternal and unchanging time actually became chaotic. The countenances of Empress Star Rain and the others turned pale at the same time as they gazed at the item, and expressions of disbelief and even despair appeared on their faces. Xiao Hao laughed coldly. It seems I don't need to introduce it. You've already recognized it. It's the Sovereign's Scepter of Time, right? Hearing this, Su Yu's pupils contracted. The Scepter of Time was the magic treasure of the Time Chief Sovereign's true body. Its quality was so high that it had even attained the level of a quasi-saint artifact. No matter how powerful the Time Ruler's magic treasure in the Time Wilderness was, it was nothing in front of the Time Scepter. It was not worth mentioning. This was Xiao Hao's real trump card. Emperor Purple Jade shrieked in despair. Impossible. Why would the Time Sovereign give you the scepter? If that was the case, what was the point of fighting over the Time Dominator? They could just wait for Xiao Hao to devour them. Haha, that's why you've lost from the very beginning. Xiao Hao smiled coldly. From the very beginning, I've been the Time Dominus designated successor. What a joke. You bunch of people who are kept in the dark are still desperately struggling. Emperor Star Rain found it hard to believe. Why did the Time Dominus do this? Since Xiao Hao had been designated as the successor, why did he deceive them for so many years? Why did he force them to fight for this day? Why did he destroy the Time Domain in the end? Why? Xiao Hao held the Time Scepter and tapped it lightly. An enormous wave of time fluctuations rippled out. Everyone's time was sucked away. Even Su Yu was no exception. In less than half an hour, they would all die. However, this was not the full power of the Time Scepter. It was just a light tap. Xiao Hao laughed loudly. Since you are about to die, I will be merciful and tell you the truth. The so-called replacement of the Time Dominus was never decided by fighting, but by the Time Dominus himself. The successor of the Time Dominus will get all the inheritance of the Time Dominus, including the Time Scepter and the 14 personal guards of the Time Dominus. Sure enough, the so-called war to become the Time Dominus was really a lie that had deceived them for hundreds of millions of years. Empress Star Mirror's body trembled. She could not accept this cruel fact. Then, the Time Dominus should have made you the Time Dominus. Why did you lead us to kill each other? This is superfluous. Her question was the question that everyone wanted to ask. Xiao Hao laughed. Because the Time Dominus wants you to kill each other and destroy all the worlds in the Time Domain. This was the true meaning of the Time Dominus's struggle. Empress Star Mirror shook her head. There is no need. The Time Dominus can destroy it himself. Why use our war? This is unnecessary. With the power of the Time Dominus, it would not take long to destroy the Time Domain with the help of the Time Scepter. Why did he have to set up such a grand scheme? Wasn't it too troublesome? Xiao Hao's gaze passed through the defensive formation and looked towards the depths of the endless void. He murmured, because in the Tao Abyss, there are some attacking existences that are staring at the Time Dominus. If the Time Dominus makes a move, they will come out of the Tao abyss. Hearing this, everyone's hearts beat wildly. The Tao abyss. The Tao abyss again. Where's the Tao abyss? What was in it that made the time dominus so afraid of it that they did not dare to act recklessly? Ordinary people think that the time dominus is the supreme existence that commands the world. Little do they know that they are constantly confronting the existences in the Tao abyss, not daring to slack off. Empress Star Mirror took a deep breath, but she still did not understand. Then, why did the time dominus destroy their own territory? Xiaohao said calmly, to wait for the destruction of the era in 20 years. He glanced at the defensive formation beneath his feet. This formation was already extremely weak and could no longer protect the land. The defensive formation of the 8-star civilization was jointly set up by the 8 great ancient gods. Its original purpose was to resist the destruction of the era. With this formation, the sacred mountain cannot completely destroy the 8-star civilization. So, they ordered the time dominus to think of ways to destroy the formation. They are restricted by the existences in the Tao abyss and cannot act on their own, so they guided you to destroy it. I don't know about other domains, but the time domain has more or less achieved its goal. Knowing the shocking secret hidden within, everyone's limbs went cold. In the end, they were just pawns in the hands of the sacred mountain and the time dominus. Their goal was to make them destroy the talismans they had. The funniest thing was that they actually did as they were told, and even destroyed the defensive formation to pieces. Chapter 2699. Once the end of the era began, they who were in an 8-star civilization no longer had any defensive power. I see. Empress Mingjing looked at her own hands and felt ridiculous. The truth was so deceiving. What fight for dominance? From the very beginning, it was a trick to deceive them into killing each other. A lie to deceive them into putting a noose around their necks. The rest of the descendants of the rulers could not accept this cruel truth and were stunned on the spot. Since you understand, you can leave your bloodlines to me and help me reach the Yuan level. Xiaohao laughed. With the time scepter in his hand, Xiaohao was the strongest in the world. Without the treasure of the time ruler, they could no longer compete with Xiaohao. Their time was being rapidly taken away by the time scepter. However, at this moment, a magnificent 9-colored light shot up into the sky. Among the crowd behind Empress Star Rain, there was a creature with an oil lamp on his head and a 9-colored light all over his body. The 9-colored light was so intense that it was like an unparalleled flame. In an instant, it engulfed Empress Star Rain and the others. The time scepter in Xiaohao's hand suddenly stopped absorbing the power of time from others and shook violently. Xiaohao was caught off guard, and he staggered backward with the scepter, almost falling down. He looked over with a hint of surprise, and his face instantly became unsightly. The sacred mortal body. He couldn't believe that there was a sacred mortal body among the people of Empress Star Rain. Wasn't that a constitution that had been extinct long ago? Why were there still survivors? The 9-colored figure was Su Yu, who had activated the oil lamp. Similarly, the treasure of the time ruler was not his last trump card. His trump card was the 4 drops of the Emperor's blood. Now, they had finally come in handy. Although 1 drop of the Emperor's blood could only be used for a short while, it was enough to deal with Xiaohao. Get lost. Su Yu pressed his 5 fingers toward the sky, and a giant 9-colored palm fell from the sky. Rumble. With a loud noise, Xiaohao was crushed. He was almost crushed into dust. Time Ray. He raised the scepter high and hit the 9-colored palm. Suddenly, the 9-colored palm was pierced, but the remaining palm power still hit Xiaohao's body. Puff! Xiaohao was immediately slapped to the point his soul collapsed, and his body transformed into a ball of blood. Back then, when the waning moon empress controlled her sacred mortal body, she was able to contend against a low-rank ruler treasure. Moreover, Su Yu had a sacred mortal body. I'll return the taste of the emperor's blood to you. Su Yu said coldly. At that time, Xiaohao had taken out the fragment of Prince Xiaoyao, and Xiaohao had used half a drop of the prince's blood to activate the prince's ruler, which had almost killed Su Yu. He even indirectly killed Wen Shui. Today, he would have a taste of the power of the holy mortal body activated by the Emperor's blood. Empress Starrain and the others were caught off guard. There was actually a sacred mortal body hidden in their midst. Moreover, a single blow had turned Xiaohao into a puddle of blood. However, how could Xiaohao die so easily with the Scepter of Time? Boundless time energy shot out of the Time Scepter, causing Xiaohao's body to return to before he was injured. In an instant, Xiaohao recovered. He shook his head, his eyes still filled with awe. Sacred mortal body, why do you, an outsider, want to meddle in the affairs of the Time Master? Xiaohao scolded from a distance. He probably didn't know that the sacred mortal body in front of him was the descendant of the ancient god Jiolong, who he had chased all over the place. Because you owe me your life. Suyu's cold voice answered him. Destroy. With a furious roar, the nine-colored light on the surface of Suyu's body rushed over like a raging flame. Xiaohao's face changed dramatically. Having experienced the horror of the nine-colored light, he had no confidence in dealing with it. However, if he fled like this, all his previous efforts would be in vain. Fight! Xiaohao roared. He stabbed the Scepter of Time in front of him and shouted in a low voice, Bloodline summoning. Gurgle. The sound of boiling water could be heard continuously. The time bloodline in Xiaohao's body was tumbling at an alarming speed. Empress Starrain and the others looked pained. Their time bloodlines were responding, leaving their bodies bit by bit, merging with Xiaohao. That was the last secret technique that the Time Master had passed on to Xiaohao. If he still couldn't take away the time bloodlines of the descendants of the Time Masters at the last moment, then he would use bloodline summoning. At the cost of sacrificing part of the power of the Scepter of Time, he would forcibly take away the bloodlines of the descendants of the Time Masters for his own use. The seemingly long process was actually completed in an instant. The bloodlines of the descendants of the Time Master, including Empress Starrain, were all taken away in an instant. However, before they had time to merge with Xiaohao's body, Xiaohao was destroyed by the nine-colored flames. His body and soul were immediately destroyed. The Scepter of Time immediately started to reverse time and saved him. However, the nine-colored flames that remained on Xiaohao's body were never extinguished. Xiaohao was then turned into ashes again. The Scepter of Time started to reverse time again. The cycle continued. Finally, with a cracking sound, a clear crack appeared on the Scepter of Time. First, it sacrificed part of its power, and then it consumed its power uncontrollably. Finally, it reached the point of exhaustion, and signs of damage appeared. This time, Xiaohao was destroyed. The damaged Scepter of Time could no longer fully restore him. It could only restore him to a state of serious injury. Fortunately, the nine-colored flames on Xiaohao's body had been consumed many times and were very weak. It could no longer destroy his body. However, at the risk of serious injury, Xiaohao still obtained all the time bloodlines as he had wished. The time domain in his body was fusing and expanding at an alarming rate. Once it reached the Yuan level, it would be the birth of the second Time Master. At that time, even the holy mortal body would no longer be able to contend against it. Suyu's eyes sharpened. Once again, the nine-colored light swept across. However, at that moment, the Emperor's blood burned out, and the oil lamp began to dry up. Suyu had no choice but to stop and pour in a drop of the Emperor's blood. However, taking advantage of this opportunity, Xiaohao activated time travel. In just a short moment, he had escaped without a trace. Suyu's gaze swept across, shooting toward Biming City of the Dream-Broken Realm. Xiaohao had escaped back to his lair. With a step, he instantly crossed half of the Heavenly Awakening Realm and arrived at the Dream-Broken Realm. Moreover, after half an incense stick of time, he appeared above Biming City. In this short period of time, he had used another drop of the Emperor's blood. Now there was only one drop left. As his colorful eyes swept down, he immediately discovered that there was a hidden underground secret chamber under the ruins of Biming City. In the secret chamber, Xiaohao was vomiting blood continuously, lying on the ground. A blind middle-aged man was treating him. Xiaohao said weakly, "Quick, start quickly." It seemed like Xiaohao had been waiting for this moment all along. The blind middle-aged man was none other than the golden-eyed Lang Jun. The golden-eyed Lang Jun immediately placed Emperor Xiaohao on a spell in the secret chamber. The spell was extremely mysterious. Even Su Yu felt that it was extremely profound, and he could not see through it. Success or failure depends on today. The golden-eyed Lang Jun immediately activated the spell. His hollow eyes were filled with a trace of long-awaited excitement and agitation. Chapter 2700. Dazzling time and space auras shot out of the formation. Mysterious heavenly book characters flew out of the formation and attached to the surface of Xiaohao's body. Inside his body, the extremely majestic time domain seemed to be resonating, seething and roaring like crazy. It was just like how Xiaohao had forcefully activated his bloodline devour. Su Yu, who was still far away, suddenly felt that something was wrong. He opened a spatial storage artifact and looked inside. His expression changed drastically. Bai Yun and Hong Xian, who were in a coma, suddenly revealed a look of deep pain. Her soft body kept twisting. A pair of golden eyes silently opened. 2 rays of golden light flowed out from it. The light was like a stream of water. It left Bai Yun and Red Immortal's body and quickly flowed into the underground ruins. Su Yu made a grabbing motion in the air, trying to catch it. However, that was a bloodline, so it was impossible to grasp it. Whoosh! 2 rays of golden light descended into the ground and fused into Xiaohao's body. Moreover, it began to fuse with the extremely dense time domain. The process was extremely painful. Xiaohao let out heart-wrenching screams. "I can't. Stop right now." Xiaohao roared. His body was about to be completely crushed. Golden-eyed Lang Jun lowered his voice and comforted. "Don't give up. Don't you want to become a dual ruler that transcends time and space? Persevere. What awaits you is an unprecedented tomorrow." It turned out that Xiaohao's ambition was not just to be the time dominator. He still wanted to become the ruler of space. However, he didn't have a spatial bloodline. Therefore, he had to first fuse the space bloodline into his body. The only way he could think of was to fuse with the Bai Yun Red deity's bloodline. This was because the Bai Yun Red deity's bloodline contained the bloodlines of both the Time Chief Sovereign and the Space Chief Sovereign. The bloodline of the Bai Yun Red deity originated from her ancestor, the Tianyi Empress. The Tianyi Empress was a special existence that controlled both time and space. Her true identity was the illegitimate child of the time Dominus and space Dominus. Bai Yun Hong Xian had obtained the inheritance of the Tianyi Empress and possessed a double bloodline. If Xiaohao could integrate the 2 bloodlines at this moment, it would be equivalent to possessing a strand of the space bloodline. Next, he used the invincible stance of the Time Chief Sovereign to sweep through the space domain. Which descendant of the Space Chief Sovereign could contend against him? He had been preparing for this plan for decades. He had waited for this day. Xiaohao let out a hysterical roar amidst the boundless pain. The 2 golden bloodlines finally began to fuse with his pure time domain bloodline. The pain faded away at this moment. Xiaohao felt as if he had gone through hell. His entire body was covered in sweat, and the unbearable pain lingered in his mind. If it happened again, Xiaohao might not have the courage to accept the fusion. Fortunately, he had finally succeeded. He looked up to the sky and laughed helplessly. "Wait until my bloodline is completely integrated and I reach the elemental realm and have a holy mortal body. Let's see what you can use to fight me then." However, a strange, hoarse laugh sounded in his ears. "Success. I've finally succeeded." Golden-eyed Playboy laughed heartily. His smile seemed to be even happier and more excited than Xiaohao's. It was as if he was the one who succeeded. Xiaohao narrowed his eyes, and his lips curled into a cruel smile. "Golden-eyed Lang Jun, you and your daughter have worked hard all these years. Why don't you rest in peace?" They knew too many of his secrets. Now, his value had been completely squeezed dry. What was the point of keeping them alive? With a thought, he activated time deprivation. With his current attainments in the time domain, would it be difficult for him to kill a weak golden-eyed Playboy? Of course not. He could erase golden-eyed Playboy from the world with just a thought. However, Xiaohao's expression suddenly changed. He realized that he could not activate his time domain. It was the golden bloodline that had fused with his body. He had suppressed his time domain. His heart suddenly sank. He panicked as if he had stepped off a cliff. He looked at golden-eyed Playboy with difficulty. A strange smile appeared on his face. "Emperor, are you surprised? Are you surprised?" It really was him. Xiaohao's heart sank, and he became more and more afraid. He had been tricked. He had been tricked by this blind man. "What did you do to me?" Xiaohao tried to stand up. However, his body was seriously injured, and he could not even move. Xiaohao could not believe that golden-eyed Playboy slowly opened his eyes. A pair of golden pupils could be seen clearly in his eyes. "Ah, you are not blind," Xiaohao screamed. Golden-eyed Playboy laughed. "If I were blind, how could I control my daughter's bloodline in your body?" It was because of the connection between their bloodlines that golden-eyed Playboy could control the golden bloodline in Xiaohao's body. Through the golden bloodline, he completely suppressed Xiaohao's time domain. "What are you doing? What do you want to do to me?" Xiaohao felt extremely sinister. The little bug that he looked down on was actually a poisonous snake in disguise. He had bitten him at the most crucial moment. Golden-eyed Playboy smiled mysteriously. "Of course, I want to become the supreme ruler of time. No, the ruler of time and space." He laughed sinisterly, and the golden light in his eyes reached its peak. Xiaohao suddenly let out a heart-wrenching cry of pain. The time bloodline in his body was wrapped up by the two golden bloodlines and rushed out of Xiaohao's body, merging into golden-eyed Playboy's body. "Ha ha! I, golden-eyed Playboy, have finally completed the unfinished wish of my ancestor." He looked up to the sky and laughed. The Tianyi Empress was the illegitimate child of two rulers. She was not recognized by either side. She was heartlessly abandoned, which was why she fled to a small place like the Outer Realm. As the descendant of a ruler, she also hoped that one day she could inherit the position of a ruler. Unfortunately, time did not wait for her. Even when she died, she did not have the chance to return to an 8-star civilization. Instead, because of love, she died in the Outer Realm. Her descendant, golden-eyed Playboy, used his cunning and viciousness and relied on opportunities to successfully do something that the Tianyi Empress would regret for the rest of her life. He became the ruler of time in one fell swoop. When the space ruler died, he killed all the descendants of the space ruler, took their bloodline, and became the ruler of space. Thus, he became the first ruler of time and space in history. Xiaohao could not accept this reality. He had been working hard since he was born. In the end, when he was so close to success, he worked for someone else. "Old thing, get it back to me." Xiaohao roared crazily. He stretched out his hands with difficulty, like a demon that was about to return to hell. He wanted to drag golden-eyed Playboy down with him. Chapter 2701. He stomped his foot and crushed Xiaohao's body and soul. In the past, Xiaohao might have been able to use his time bloodline to reverse time. But at this moment, not a single trace of his time bloodline remained. It was impossible to recover. He was really dead. Furthermore, he had died at the feet of a nobody that he didn't care about. To a prodigy of a generation, a ruler of time, this was a great irony. At this moment, the golden-eyed gentleman could not help but laugh out loud. The world is mine." Golden-eyed Lang Jun almost went crazy. His face was twisted with madness. It was as if a person who had been obsessed for many years had finally gotten what he wanted. However, at that moment, a clicking sound rang out in the ruins without any warning. "How dare a small ant compete with me for the glow?" Golden-eyed Playboy's face stiffened. He turned his head and saw a black-robed man standing behind him. His facial features were ferocious, which was the appearance of a demon. "You are?" The golden-eyed Playboy pretended to ask, but he took the opportunity to turn around and use the terrifying time field within his body to attack the black-robed man in front of him. However, the man casually reached out his hand and grabbed golden-eyed Longjuan's wrist. Then, endless demonic energy rushed into the golden-eyed gentleman's body. "Ah!" The golden-eyed scholar let out a hoarse cry of pain, just like Xiaohao before he died. His body was quickly disintegrated by the terrifying demonic qi. Before the time domain in Shao Chen's body could fully merge with his body, the demonic qi rushed out. He was grabbed by the black-robed man. Haha, the bloodline of the chief sovereign of time, as well as a portion of the bloodline of the chief sovereign of space. The black-robed man was none other than a stranger. It was the holy demon. He was once one of ancient God, Nine Nether's four protectors. He was unwilling to be left out, so he pocketed the inheritance left behind by the ancient god of the netherworld and became the master of the heaven law. Furthermore, he had been lying low all this time. He'd been waiting for this day. In the end, he did succeed, obtaining everything without shedding a drop of blood. No, golden-eyed Lang Jun screamed hysterically. He was indignant. After so many years of hard work, he had finally succeeded with great difficulty, only to be attacked by the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. He would take away everything that was within his reach. Hee, what a pitiful bug. The holy demon laughed sinisterly and did not kill him. Instead, he tapped on her forehead. Suddenly, the golden-eyed playboy stopped struggling and his eyes became dull. He was no longer as vicious and cunning as before. What replaced it was confusion and obedience. He had been transformed into a corpse, an ambitious and ruthless person who almost ascended to the heavens to become a king, was reduced to the corpse race just like that. After obtaining the time sovereign's bloodline, the holy demon laughed heartily. There's only one last step left. The holy demon revealed a sinister smile. Su Yu's heart thumped, as if he had realized something. He took a step forward and arrived above Nanming City. What made his eyes almost pop out of his sockets was that Nanming City had already fallen into the siege of the Devil Race army. Under Elder Mo's terrifying battle prowess, the tunnel masters that remained in the city were dying at a visible rate. The only fortunate thing was that the Emperor's palace had not fallen yet. Under the protection of Chu, Duo Mu, and Feng Ling, Qin Xiener and her daughter were safe and sound. It was just that the surge of the devil race had come so suddenly. They were unable to withstand the attacks for a while and could only retreat in defeat. The Emperor's hall was about to fall. Su Yu rushed back in time, and he pressed the air. The 9-colored light turned into 9 colorful dragons and swept forward. In an instant, the invading devil race was wiped out, including several demon elders. They were killed on the spot. This scene scared the devil race into retreating frantically. The demon faction master and the little demon master, Xie Xiaoya, were shocked. The sacred mortal body. It's the sacred mortal body. How could a body that had been extinct appear again? Retreat. The demon master made a prompt decision and immediately chose to retreat. In front of the sacred mortal body, they were just fragile puppets that would be killed in one blow. Only the little demon master, Xie Xiaoya, looked at the sacred mortal body in confusion. Looking at him, Xie Xiaoya felt as if she was looking at Su Yu. But why was Su Yu here? How could it be the sacred mortal body? Until Su Yu's cold words came. Xie Xiaoya. That voice was Su Yu's. However, before Xie Xiaoya could cry out in surprise, Su Yu said coldly, "You killed my wife and daughter while I was away. You really surprised me." He never thought that Xie Xiaoya would attack Qin Xiener and Su Kai-er. Xie Xiaoya was stunned. She didn't know who was in the Emperor's hall. She only knew that the person inside was the person that the holy demon lord wanted to catch at all costs. That person was actually Su Yu's wife and daughter. Unfortunately, Su Yu did not wait for her to explain and quickly descended. Seeing that the two of them were safe and sound, he was slightly relieved. If anything happened to them, it would be a mistake that he would never be able to make up for in his life. His eyes narrowed as he glanced at somewhere in the sky. "Holy demon, get out here." His voice contained a power that could shatter heaven and earth. The space exploded, and the holy demon fell out in a slightly embarrassed manner. His eyes were solemn as he said in a deep voice, "Sacred mortal body, my actions have nothing to do with you. Please step aside. You wanted to kill his wife and daughter, and you said it had nothing to do with you? Die." Su Yu was too lazy to talk nonsense with the holy demon. He turned into a 9-colored streamer of light and pressed down from the sky. The entire sky turned into 9 colors and rumbled down. The holy demon looked up, and his face changed dramatically to resist. However, under the pressure of the 9-colored light, the holy demon spat out demonic blood and could not withstand the attack of the sacred mortal body. His body was struck by a large amount of demonic energy, making him extremely weak. The holy fiend was severely injured in just a single exchange. With a spurt of energy, Suyu turned into a sharp arrow, piercing through the air. Swoosh! The 9-colored arrow pierced through the holy demon in an instant. His sturdy body immediately crumbled, but he did not die. Even an elder of the demon race had the ability to evolve several times, not to mention the holy demon ancestor himself. First transformation of the holy demon. His aura suddenly became magnificent. That was a transformation that he had sacrificed a great deal to perform. However, he still could not withstand a blow from the sacred mortal body. Suyu threw a punch at him, shattering his body once again. Second transformation of the holy demon. The shattered body of the holy demon was strengthened again. Suyu's eyes narrowed, and the 9-colored light on the surface of his body turned into raging flames that burned his body black. The second transformation of the demon body could no longer be shattered. Third transformation of the holy demon. The blackened demon body recovered to its original state, and his aura was even greater. Suyu's 9-colored light could no longer hurt him. The holy demon's face was full of hostility and murderous intent. You forced me to lose 90% of my life. Are you satisfied now? He roared, his eyes filled with monstrous resentment. After lying dormant for countless years, he had finally achieved his wish. However, Suyu had forced him to lose most of his life. So what if he obtained the bloodline of the Time Ruler? There was not much life left to enjoy. I want you dead. Chapter 2702. Suyu waved his hand, and the Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron flew out. He placed his palms on the Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron and activated it with the 8 domains. The 8 flying dragons flew out at the same time, pushing the Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron to spin. When it reached a terrifying speed, the entire Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron was scorching hot. At this moment, using the Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron in his holy mortal physique state, the power of the cauldron was incomparable to before. Whoosh! The Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron revolved to the extreme, then was flicked out by Suyu. Bang! The Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron turned into an afterimage and swept past. Wherever it went, the entire space and even the defensive array formation outside was completely cut open. The power of this strike surpassed the peak. The holy demon swept over with a shocking demonic aura, clashing head-on with the Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron. Bang! Boundless loud noises shook the entire southern region of the Broken Dream Realm. All the world shattered into dust like illusions. Only Nanming City, which was under their feet, was still intact with the help of the 3 protectors. The rest of the land had been reduced to ruins, leaving behind only countless dust particles. Cough! The smoke and dust dispersed. The holy demon revealed its true form. Its body was covered in hideous wounds. His life force had reached an extremely weak point. Even if Suyu didn't kill him, he wouldn't be able to live for long. I can't accept this. I've schemed for 10,000 years, but I've lost to the successor of the Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron. The holy demon roared. Once again, he turned into an afterimage and pounced forward. However, this time, its target was not Suyu, but someone in the Emperor's Hall. That person was neither Qin Xiener nor Su Kai-er. It was Huang Fui. Give me the Eye of Heavenly Death. I can still fight. For some reason, the holy demon had an incomparable desire for the heavenly Tao's Eye of Death. In fact, that desire was even higher than the legacy of Chu San. Suyu struck him with his palm. A 9-colored light descended and was about to kill the holy demon. However, at that moment, the 9-colored light became incomparably weak. The 9-colored light on Suyu's body receded like a tide. The light from the oil lamp above them dimmed again. The Son of Heaven's blood had been completely burned away. The sacred mortal body could not hold on any longer. Suyu roared furiously in his heart. Why did it have to happen now? Just give him a little more time. The holy demon was no longer able to stop him. He grabbed at the air, and Huang Fui screamed in pain. The death eye of the heavenly Tao that he was born with was forcibly taken away. Holding the heavenly Tao's Azura's eye, the holy demon's eyes were filled with greed. My demon race has the heavenly Tao's Azura's eye, and we can attain a supreme demon emperor's body. Even if we can only live for a moment, it's enough. The demon emperor was a legendary existence. The holy demon had once heard from ancient god Nine Nether that a terrifying existence had been born in the last epoch. He was called the demon emperor. It was the ancestor of all devils. In the last era, they were second only to the 9 sacred ancestors. His battle prowess was not necessarily weaker than the sacred ancestor. However, luck was not on his side. When he accompanied the human ancestor to the holy mountain, the 9-tailed emperor used the heavenly Tao's death eye to take his life. His life was forever sealed in the heavenly Tao's eye of death. Countless descendants of demon emperors dreamed of obtaining the heavenly law death's eye. He released the life of the demon emperor within. Once that happened, the demon emperor would borrow the bloodline of his descendants to be reborn and rule the world once more. Originally, the holy demon had planned to obtain the heavenly law death's eye. He wanted to absorb the demon emperor's life bit by bit and replace it. However, after the battle with Suyu, the sacred mortal body, his foundation had been damaged. He could no longer realize his ambition. Therefore, he simply used his own body to attract the demon emperor to be reborn. Using the demon emperor's hand, he would wipe out all enemies in the world and fulfill his long-cherished wish. Ha ha! Sacred mortal body, I will grind your bones to dust. The holy demon was filled with deep resentment. He pressed the heavenly law death's eye into his own eye socket. As long as the heavenly law death's eye fused with his bloodline, he could successfully release the life sealed by the demon emperor. Then, the demon emperor would rule the world. However, at this moment, the holy demon's palm froze in front of his eye socket, unable to move. No, it was not that he could not move. Instead, his body had fallen into a state of frozen time. The holy demon had the cultivation of the heavenly law master. There was only one person in the entire 8-star civilization who could freeze him, the ruler of time. A hoarse laugh came slowly. A mouse that has been hiding for tens of thousands of years has finally revealed its head in front of food. Behind the holy demon, an old man appeared without warning. He stood with his hands behind his back. He looked exceptionally old, and his whole body was filled with the scent of death. To be precise, there was no scent of a living person on his body. It was as if he was a dead creature. Seeing him, Suyu's heart skipped a beat. Wasn't this the old man who had helped him refine the time essence in the hair? The old man had also given him a wooden box. He had said that if the wooden box was delivered to its owner one day, the time essence in the hair would be unlocked, and Suyu would be able to absorb it. Many years had passed. Suyu had almost forgotten about him. Unexpectedly, he had appeared at the last moment. Moreover, his identity was unexpected. The Time Master, a master who should have died. He was not dead. The Time Master's finger gently touched the holy demon's back. The body of the heavenly law master was like a piece of wood, constantly drifting with the wind. Only the heavenly law death's eye and all the bloodlines of the descendants of the Time Master were left. The Time Master tried to grasp the two objects. However, the strange thing was that his hand was transparent and could not grasp the two objects. Suyu felt relieved when he saw this. The Time Master had cultivated a secret technique. In addition to the original body, there was also the future incarnation and the past incarnation. The one in front of him was the future incarnation. He was in a future time and space, so naturally he could not grasp everything in the present time and space. Everyone held their breath, especially the demons. They could not believe the scene in front of them. Their holy demon had perished just like that, and it had perished at the hands of an old rival of countless years. From the beginning, the Time Master had been waiting for this moment, waiting to kill the holy demon personally. After killing the holy demon, the old head of the Time Master turned gently and looked at Su Yu. The descendant of the ancient god Jiolong, it's been a long time. Su Yu's heart was beating wildly, and his heart was palpitating. He did not think that the Time Master would treat the descendants of the ancient god Jiolong kindly. For a moment, the whole world was silent. No one had expected this. In the end, the only remaining future incarnation of the Time Master had appeared. Su Yu said, "It has indeed been a long time. You're the one who hid the most in this scheme." The Time Master smiled hoarsely. "You flatter me." Chapter 2703. Unlike you, who can calculate everything in the future just by calculating. I should be the one admiring you. At this moment, Su Yu couldn't be happy. He would rather not have such a compliment. Then, after so many years of planning, it's time to end it, the Master of Time said indifferently. The bloodline of the Master of Time on the ground suddenly squirmed. It began to condense into a young human figure. That human figure was none other than the Master of Time's young form. I just lacked the body of a descendant. Unfortunately, I originally planned to use Xiaohao as a vessel, the Master of Time said hoarsely. From the beginning, the Master of Time had never thought of giving up his position. All he wanted was immortality. Through all the bloodlines, he would be reborn in Xiaohao's body. It was just that the situation had changed slightly. Let's deal with the ancient god of Nine Nether first, the Master of Time said with a faint smile. His gaze turned to Qin Xianer. Chu, Duo Mu, and Feng Ling's expressions changed abruptly, and they immediately stood guard beside Qin Xianer. The Master of Time shook his head slightly. It's useless. I've seen this scene before. Any resistance is futile. His palms slowly grabbed over. Black divine flames immediately gushed out from the bodies of Chu and the others. That was the Nine Nether divine flame, the legacy of the ancient god of Nine Nether sealed in their bodies. At this moment, they were all caught by the Master of Time. Finally, with a hook of his finger, the three divine flames condensed into a purple-black round bead and floated to the ground. However, the Master of Time did not stop. He continued to grasp. The bloodline of the ancient god of Nine Nether in Qin Xianer's body was also slowly pulled out of her body. As long as the last trace of the bloodline of the ancient god of Nine Nether is destroyed in the world, she will never be able to be resurrected again. At the same time, Su Kai are beside him. Traces of unusual bloodlines were also pulled out of her body. You also have a weak bloodline of the ancient god of Nine Nether, and a trace of the seeds of the 8 great domains. Su Kai showed a pained expression, clutching her throat, feeling that she was almost out of breath. However, the world was so big at this time. Who could save her? Who could save her mother? In front of the Master of Time, everything was so small. However, at this moment, the 9-colored light that had clearly faded away suddenly rose into the sky again, turning the entire world into 9 colors. The Time God's aged body trembled as he turned his head in disbelief. The oil lamp above Su Yu's head was reignited, and his whole body emitted a dazzling 9-colored light. The Time Sovereign couldn't believe it. He came from the future, so why didn't he see this scene? No, it shouldn't be like this. Su Yu's Emperor's blood had clearly been used up. At that moment, Su Yu had an unfathomable expression on his face. You must be very surprised as to why I still have the Emperor's blood, right? Because from the very beginning, I didn't have 4 drops. He still had half a drop. That half drop was taken from Prince Xiao Yao's severed arm. He had been hiding it all this time. Even when the Holy Devil was about to transform into a Devil Emperor, he had never used it. Because he understood very well. There was also a hidden figure, the Time Dominator. Su Yu himself had cultivated the Time Incarnation. How could he not understand the principle that even if the original body died, the future incarnation would not necessarily die? Therefore, this was half a drop of the Emperor's blood. He had been waiting for the ruler of time to show himself. Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron. Su Yu activated the Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron, and it turned into a fragmentary line as it shot forward with a loud rumble. The ruler of time immediately put down Qin Xianer and the others and displayed the time domain. Freeze! However, the divine nine-dragon cauldron froze for a moment. However, 8 great domains erupted from its body and forcibly broke through the freeze of time. Boom! The divine nine-dragon cauldron slammed into the ruler of time's chest. Poof! As strong as he was, under the attack of the divine nine-dragon cauldron personally activated by the divine nine-dragon cauldron, he finally couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. However, this couldn't hurt the ruler of time's foundation. He stared at Suyu across the air. Time invasion. The 9-colored light on the surface of Suyu's body immediately dimmed at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was the river of time that forced him to return to the state of an ordinary person. Humph! Suyu formed a seal with his hands and shouted in a low voice, "Future incarnation." Another 9-colored figure shook the sky and earth and slowly appeared. For a moment, 2 9-colored suns appeared in the sky at the same time. "You also learn my time incarnation?" The ruler of time's eyelids twitched. Suyu said lightly, "What do you think?" His original body activated the divine nine-dragon cauldron, while the future incarnation activated the cauldron of the 8 great domains. 2 mortal saint bodies, 2 peerless divine cauldrons. Together, they were suppressed. The ruler of time was shocked. He rolled up his long sleeves and shouted, "River of time." With a loud roar, he forcibly summoned the river of time. Suyu and his clone, including himself, were all swept into the river of time. This didn't represent the flow of time in the past. It represented the long river of the future. Only here would his strength be slightly close to the original body. Sure enough, as soon as he entered the river of time, his strength skyrocketed. His hands grabbed the divine nine-dragon cauldron and the cauldron of the 8 great domains. The 2 sides were in a stalemate. In the river of time, an earth-shattering battle broke out. "Descendant of the ancient god of 9 dragons, you can't do anything to me," the ruler of time said hoarsely. "In the future, I am immortal." Suyu said coldly, "Is that so? I think you'll die more thoroughly." In the real world, the future incarnation couldn't be killed. Only in the space-time of the future could his body, which was hidden in the river of the future, be completely destroyed. Swish! In each of his palms, he held a giant door. One was the gate of black feathers, and the other was the gate of white feathers. The door was densely covered with the rich power of the ancient god of 9 underworlds. There were countless fragments of the ancient god realm of 9 underworlds left. Only this piece of the ancient god realm of 9 underworlds was set up by the ancient god of 9 underworlds to seal it tightly. Since ancient times, no one had opened them at the same time. Only today, 9 underworlds appear. Suyu opened the 2 doors at the same time. He combined the 2 doors into one. Suddenly, a mighty and unparalleled aura of 9 underworlds swept out. The 2 doors creaked at the same time, unable to bear the burden. It was as if something was forcing its way out of the door. Finally, the solid and indestructible giant door finally shattered at the same time after a rumble. A boundless and enormous netherworld realm suddenly appeared in front of him. Boom! The 9 underworlds pressed down on the ruler of time. Moreover, in the 9 underworlds, endless emerald flames emerged, burning the ruler of time. Miserable howls resounded throughout the long river of time. This was the real purpose of the ancient god of 9 underworlds leaving this world. He hoped that his descendant would one day hold this world in his hands and fight against the ruler of time. "I am the ruler of time, an existence that controls time, and I will never disappear in time," the ruler of time roared.